Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Just making sure my audio is working. It appears to be yes. How are we all? Went to great effort this evening. Great effort to convince Chicken to sit on the chair. And so my partner and I put her on the chair and have been patting her for a while. Um, I've put one of her favorite towels there. She likes to sit on our towels sometimes, and so this one's like basically hers now. We don't use it anymore. Uh, so so you get some chicken, which is a rare occurrence, I think, on the stream nowadays, since she's recently discovered that our bed is more comfortable than her what used to be her favorite chair, which is where she is now. How's everyone doing? Got plenty of people on today. Nicole's procrastinating from her final exam. Who else is there? Sijun, hello. Charlois, hello. 2010 Impact Font memes are back in style. This is me just going to like you can literally Google meme generator and then just type stuff in and it works. And I think all the discussion pre-stream was about the meme in the preview for today's stream, and it pops up in the slides itself. I actually like. I'm getting better at this thing where like I've got what 29 slides and I did it within the last 24 hours and I'm going to present it now. So one could say that tonight is an experiment for me for how chill I can be at phoning in an academic lecture instead of actually putting genuine work into it like I would for so for example, like I spent I want to say 3 hours on this, which is not that great actually. That's not actually much better than usual. When I usually do like a 2 hour lecture, I will minimum spend 8 hours on it before I deliver it. So this isn't actually that much better. When I said phoning it in, it's not really that true. I'm just doing it reasonably quickly. But anyway, hello everybody. Yeah, and so we'll talk about the meme when I get to it. Maybe. As Professor Hascam says, you can never explain an old meme and not look like a crazy person. Yeah. Well, you know, every time you have to explain a joke, either you've told a bad joke, or in this case, I've used a meme that has definitely dated itself. I think this meme dates back to when was Insane Cloud Posse being laughed at for being stupid? I'm thinking like 2005 or something like that. Yeah, and everyone's like, we've not seen this meme. Nicole's nearly finished. TABL 1710 tomorrow morning. I'm not sure what that subject is. I just look at that and I just see the word table, but I'm sure it's not like applied carpentry or something like that. Hamish asks, is this Mark's version of Eng 1000? It is. It's Mark's version of Eng 1000 and Dezen 1000, all squeezed into 2 hours. It's not going to be 2 hours. It's going to be 3 hours minimum. But I'm committed to that. I'm committed to that. I got a full glass of water so I can talk for a long time. But again, it's it's going to be very much my way of doing things. So you know my way of doing things, where what I will do is I go, okay, there are proper names for everything. It's proper terms. It's proper procedures. I'm going to throw all that out the window and teach you something which I think, well, which I hope grabs you and resonates with you in a proper way that you will that you will kind of like it's something that's easier to get, I think, is what I'm saying, because I find that a lot of education in general is not actually teaching people stuff they need to know. It's putting up barriers in a way that makes it really difficult for people who don't know things to get involved. It's kind of like us unintentionally, as I have done already. I've used a meme that doesn't resonate with my audience. Most of the technical jargon for how to learn things is people accidentally teaching from a cultural standpoint from where they are comfortable, not a cultural standpoint from when their audience or their students is comfortable. And so you can see me, I've already made that mistake where I go, oh, I'm going to put this meme in. Everyone knows this meme, but no one knows the meme. right? So that's a really, really good example of that kind of mistake where I've just done the hello fellow kids, and it's like, dude, they were like playing with Duplo when this meme came out. They were not listening to rap at that time, you know. So it's like, oh, okay, oops, you know. A lot of stuff that is taught is going to be like that, but another generation gap further. And it's unfortunate because like a lot of the things are super super useful to know, but it really depends on how we deliver them, whether they resonate and how they resonate. So interesting stuff. So let's just have a look at what else is happening in chat. Everyone's excited that Chiki's here. Jack says it's from 2010, so I guess it's not that old, but it is still pretty old. Nicole says, one of my teachers used to say, explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. You learn something, but the frog dies. So true. Jack said, save you from Desmond. I thought Desmond was good. I don't know. Well, obviously I didn't take the course, so I don't know what it's like. But I like the idea of it, because I know that the idea of learning things from a standpoint of designing for humans is vitally important. And the majority of kind of significant failures in engineering and in software specifically, a significant percentage of app failures are based on them forgetting that humans are going to use them. You know, so it's totally a thing. And so I can understand why people are asked to do it. Nicole said, oh, TABL is Introduction to Business Law. Right, so the BL is business law. Oh, and you don't study comp sci or engineering, but you're here. Nicole, I just assumed that you were like a 1511 student or something like that. Well, like, I think that's great because like you've been a regular on my streams for ages now, to the point where I know who you are because you say hi all the time. And I didn't realize that you've never taken computing, so you're just in amongst all the computing students. The good thing is, what I'm talking about today, this whole process of engineering is a problem-solving process, and it is not specific to computing, and it doesn't require any prior computing knowledge. I'm not going to go into that depth or anything like that. Tawaka, how's it going? Oh, you haven't not checked in a while? Well, welcome back. Who else is here? Michael's here. Hello. Donna, well done. Donna's recruiting Nicole for Comp 1511, which would be fun if you wanted to do it. GameStormer says 2010 was 11 years ago. Yeah, things have, I mean, like, if you consider how long the pandemic's been going, it's actually about 40 years ago, but you know. Jack thinks Des in 2000 has been poorly implemented, but the idea could be good. Right, it's worse than the courses it replaced right now. I think that's okay. I think the first time a course runs, you've got to give it some slack. I'm saying this because I'm about to run graphics in a rebuilt version for the first time, and I want everyone to go easy on me. I've got my framework. I haven't written my course outline, but I have the framework that the course outline is going to be written on. People already asked me for it, which is understandable because, you know, some people now have some free time and they want to like get into it, get some advanced knowledge. Which also takes us to why I'm delivering this particular talk tonight, is that someone, I hope they're still here, but I can't remember who it was. I didn't look back to see their name, was asking about what should we do for student projects? I should just go into the slides because I think the first slide is on that. But let me just finish talking to everyone in chat first, and then we'll get going. Chicken. That's glad she's facing away from the camera right now. Twaxa exams are over, thank God. I'm happy for you. It's funny because like my schedule's completely different. Now my work starts to really ramp up. I've done the majority of my recruitment for my graphics tutors, and then I'm going to need to like assign them work and kind of design the infrastructure of the subject and make sure that like they build some of it and stuff like that. So I've got a little bit of work to do over the next. What are we looking at the moment? 1, 2, 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and then we launch. I should probably start writing the first lectures and tutorials now. But, you know, as we've shown here, I could write a lecture in a day if I'm phoning it in, and I will be, because that's how I work. I mean, granted, I've been thinking about it and working on it in a different way for the past few months, but not. I don't often like to write my slides too far in advance, because then it's not. It's like I want my slides to be crystallizing what I'm going to deliver as I deliver it, rather than writing them like a year beforehand and then forgetting what I was going to say and then delivering it, which is kind of what 1511 turned into. I think 1511 was good for me because it was I did it so many times repetitively that I could just remember it and reel it back off again. But graphics is not going to be like that. I'm going to remember things just long enough to deliver them and then immediately forget them again afterwards. Just like what you do in exams. uh, Everyone's trying to get Nicole to transfer to comp sci. That's pretty funny. Look, you don't have to be a UNSW student to be on my stream. There's actually plenty of people who hop in my stream who aren't from UNSW. Okay, so Eng 1000 computing stream, Hamish says, let's do the first 4 weeks of 1511 in 2 hours. This could never go wrong. Did that actually happen? Or is it like they just assumed that you knew stuff already? I don't know. Anyway. Oh, one thing I nearly forgot. I am wearing a Stray Kids t-shirt because Stray Kids have just released their new album, like seriously like an hour ago, and I haven't heard it yet. So for me, this is my favorite K-pop group. So like, not just my favorite K-pop group. It's like the music that I've listened to the most, I think, in the last year or so has been Stray Kids. Their new album came out. I've heard and seen the video for the first song, and it's banger. It's so good. So like it's heaps of fun. Anyway, just plugging my favorite band. We will listen to that later. Not on stream. I've had one copyright strike already. I will not risk more of that. But I will be listening to the album later once the stream finishes. Okay, so let's go through. So what I'm gonna do. Let's go into the slides. So I am not going to do what I did a few months ago where I had a talk I was going to give and I spent 45 minutes on slide 0. We are going to get into it and talk about it. Oh, Jack says Eng 1000 chucks people in the deep end. Interesting. I thought 1511 was the deep end. Are we not that deep? Because I actually feel that 1511 could ease off a little bit and be fine. You know, like we would still be teaching people useful stuff if we didn't teach as much content as we do. But I don't know. It's 1511's actually out of my hands for 2 terms, so I think it'll be really interesting to see what it looks like next year. Okay, so getting into what was Kaichi. Let's see how long slide 0 takes. Slide 0 was only up for technically a few seconds, because I was just talking and bantering, and then we went into it. Actually, well, I know if you think about it, it's been 15 minutes. Anyway. Okay, so what are people saying? Anish says, I should be studying for my networks exam, but this stream is more interesting. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. But I also think, in a weird way, that maybe you learn more from things that you're interested in. I was really, really fickle as a student. If I got into something, then it was easy marks, like distinctions, high distinction level, easy marks. If it was interesting and I felt like there was a flow that I could get into to doing it. But if it was mildly boring, I would get my kind of like low credit kind of thing and just be like, yeah, I'm walking away. That's just like my spectrum of marks. If I really didn't like something, then I'd fail or barely pass it. I think I had like my mark for when I was phoning it in was 52, 53, which is like nearly perfect. You know, I put the minimal amount of effort and still passed. When it was within a field that I understood, then my average was, I think, 72. Like, I had these marks that I hit multiple times, the same mark multiple times. And then when I knew it and I loved it and I was really inspired by it, my mark was 84. which is a real shitty mark to get if you care about the bracketing, or like distinction, high distinction, and stuff. Is like I did got very few HDs, but my average was really high. So there was this kind of thing, and it really didn't mean much about the subjects and stuff like that. It was entirely based on whether I was excited about it or not. And one could say potentially that that was a good way to figure out what you were actually going to do well with professionally, is the things that excite you, the things that you want to learn regardless of the regardless of what you're supposed to be doing or the path you're meant to be on, which is all bullshit. But like finding the things that you want to do is really interesting. Anyway, Nicole said she might take 1511 one term for the lols. The other thing you could do is don't enroll in the subject itself, and just hop in for the streamed lectures. And then you kind of you get some of the experience of it without like necessarily risking your wham or anything on the subject. However, if you do like computing and you like the idea of computing, 1511's a great way to kind of see a lot of it. And it opens up a lot of knowledge about how computers actually work. But anyway, what are people talking about? Talking about a lot of different subjects and stuff like that. Yeah, also like my past lectures are up. They're kind of monstrous at the moment looking at them. Like I saw one of my past lectures pop up on my feed because I've got two accounts. Like I've got one YouTube account which I use. So basically it's all just gaming videos and K-pop. And then and Warhammer. And then the other one, which this one that I stream from, that has very few viewed videos. Like I don't have like a viewing history on this account really. But so when I'm on my other account, which of course is subscribed to this account just for shits and giggles, some of my videos pop up and some of my lectures have got like 4,000 views. I'm just like, what's going on? And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's kind of fun. I guess there's a lot of people who, while I'm not teaching it, are also going back and looking at it because it's nice to have two different lecturers' perspective on the same things. But anyway, now I'm turning it into slide 1 for half an hour. So let's look at slide 1. The question that was asked of me was, what should we do for a side project? And I thought, this is a really good question. Chicken Schnitty, that's very nice of you. They said, your lecture saved my Comp 1511 assignment too. So did you do it this term and my lectures helped? I'm glad, because like it's a different perspective from Andrew, who is your main lecturer. So it's nice because sometimes just seeing something from a different angle makes it much clearer. Anyway, so people ask me, what should we do for a side project? Do you have examples of side projects that would be good? So first off, I started thinking of side projects that would be good. And I was going to basically do like a short sort of 20-minute segment and go, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this. And then I realized that was not a complete way of helping you. Like a better way of helping you, instead of saying do these projects, was, why don't I teach you how to find the projects? And if I teach you how to find the projects and how to find things that you want to do, that then started immediately expanding in my mind to the entire design and engineering process. And I thought, well, screw it, let's just do the whole process. Because this is not going to hurt in any way. This is going to help no matter what. If I just go, let me do an overview of engineering, like as a thing, as a concept, because it's interesting how much, like, you know, how many people, I don't know how many people here are in engineering degrees, but like you can be in an engineering degree and have no idea what engineering is. I mean, that's the point, right? Because you start off in an engineering degree not knowing what it is, and you end your engineering degree knowing what it is, right? So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a look into the future and say, okay, this is what engineering is. So it's like, if we want to do a side project, we could actually go through the entire process. This is why hackathons and game jams and stuff like that are super, super cool. Because what they do is, instead of, you know, like every uni assignment, they set you up with something, then you do something, and they go, if you were going to do this professionally, you would continue it. And so they give you this portion of it and go, this is the thing that we think is important for you to theoretically learn. And that's fine. You do that because you don't want to overburden your students and you want them to focus on the right thing. If you do something like a 40-hour game jam or a hackathon or something like that, what you're forced to do is figure out what the assignment's going to be, spec the assignment yourself, implement that spec, test it, give yourself marks at the end, and then push it to like the concept of professional release. And then you've actually done the entire process, which is really, really valuable, because like sometimes when we're being really theoretical about things, we don't practice the entire process. So what we do is if we only teach you theoretical things, we throw you out into the workforce, you don't know how to finish, or you don't know how to start, or you don't know certain linkage bits between things. So it's interesting. So that's why I think it's really interesting to do the whole process, which again, I think is the rationale behind courses like Eng 1000, Eng 2000, Desen 1000, Desen 2000, stuff like that, is to try to give you this entire thing. I did not put my hand up to teach any of those subjects when I saw them coming up. I was like, I am overworked already. I'm not going to take on more things. So this is just my side view of it. It's not like, this is not necessarily how I would teach that subject or anything, but this is my look at probably the same kind of content, which is the whole process. Nicole's already learned Python and JavaScript. So Lux is like, no, you learn things? Unbelievable. Yeah, you could probably take 1511 easy if you can already code in other languages. In that case, take it as a WAM booster. I'm not saying now not to take it, because it might hurt your WAM, because it's not an easy subject. I know it's not an easy subject. But the fact that you can already code in other languages, it is now an easy subject. Anyway, okay, so what is this process and what are we going to look at? So the first question was, what are good ideas for side projects? So one thing is, how do we decide what we want to do? I'm going to talk about a process about deciding what to do. And it's funny because I subtitled this this talk as like the entire process of engineering in 2 hours, which it is. It's an overview, but I mean, there's lots of gaps. I'm going to leave lots of gaps. It's not... This 2 hours does not stand in for an entire engineering degree, in case you didn't know that already. But also, I subtitled this, How to Make a World-Destroying Startup in Just 2 Hours. Most startups with cool ideas that manage to launch a good app have gone through this process. Obviously, they take their time with it. You know, they could be 6 months of this process before you even see what's going on. A lot of startups start stealth, right? Because you don't want your cool idea to be known before you're ready to be ahead of the market with it, you know, that kind of thing. So, but this process is the kind of thing that people do. Okay, so how do we decide what we want to do? This is a very difficult question. I'll get into it. Each of these points has its own set of slides. And then how do we approach this issue or this opportunity that we've discovered? So how do we make a plan for what we're going to do, which is exactly the next point. How are we going to plan what we're going to make? And then how do we keep on track? How do we make sure that we're doing it right? And partway through, at the end and partway through, because this is usually an iterative process. This isn't the kind of thing where we finish and stop. That's a real old style of engineering. Modern engineering is like, you try things, you test it, and you go back, and you try it again in another way, test it, and go back, and you keep going that until you decide you want to stop, or you consider that the tests are starting to come back positive enough that you think this thing is ready for like public consumption, which it never is. But it doesn't matter whether something is or isn't ready. Sometimes things have to happen, you know. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about today, is this kind of process. And I've got... Oh, actually, I was going to think about it. I do have slides. I'll give you the links to the slides here. I didn't shorten that link, but you know. And I'll drop the link in Discord there as well. So I just dropped it in the Marc on Mondays Discord as well. Spoiler alert, it's more fun if you don't know what's coming. But if you want to read ahead, that's totally fine. I have like a narrative story. I just have one reveal, which is really funny, that I wanted to talk about. But anyway, when I make slides for the streams, I put more of my own jokes in the slides than I do in official lecture material. But I'm starting to come across to the idea that maybe my official lectures should just be like Marc on Mondays and not like that stuffy university feeling. And I have a feeling now that I've had a term of just doing Marc on Mondays, that's what it's going to be. So graphics is going to be super loose. But I actually think it's going to be better for teaching people by being like that. I'm just sort of slowly evolving my teaching style, I think. So we'll see where it goes. Okay, so these are the main points I'm going to talk about today. So it's interesting, right? Because I'm loose, but I'm still very structured. There's a whole script that I've written for this. So it's interesting. Zero said some of the chem lectures have jokes and memes on almost every slide, and it's great. Jack said, I don't think your lectures were ever stuffy feeling. Oh, that's nice. That's a fuzzy feeling. It's different. Oh, Sidron wants the Discord link. 1 second. Did I put it in stream news? I know I had a link somewhere here ages ago. There we go. All right. There's the link to my Discord. All right. So let's get into it. Engineering, what does that even mean? Okay. So let me just move myself a little. I'll turn that. Okay. I don't know how many of these slides I'm going to cover up with myself and Chicken Cam. That'd be really funny if I just had Chicken Cam in my official lectures as well. I think that'd be really fun. But anyway, I'll move Chicken out of the way for a second. Engineering, what does that mean? The meme is magnets. How do they work? If you want to look it up, I'm not going to explain it because, as we said, if I dissect the frog will be dead. But you can look it up if you want. I guess it's an old meme. They're old codes, but they still check out. That's even older. I just quoted something from like 1981. Anyway, so oh yeah, Halogen said I should probably pin that in Discord. I think I might actually have it pinged in Discord. Pinned in Discord. I just didn't look at the pins. Anyway, so engineering and the way that it's going to be taught officially and stuff like that is going to have all these words. They're words like requirements gathering, specification, design, capital D, design, by the way. There's many different things that are called design. So when you say design to some people, like they will instantly go to graphic design, but graphic design is called graphic design for a reason. The capital D design is much wider than graphic design. It's not that graphic design isn't design, it is totally another part of design. But when we're talking about from an engineering perspective, it's the kind of process of preparing to make things correctly. I don't know. I have loose interpretations of these things. Implementation is the thing you probably know the best if you're computing students. Sorry, Nicole. But it's the making of stuff, right? And then testing. Testing and implementation go in together, but all three of these go in together a lot because this is the cycle that we'll go through kind of after we've done these things. Anyway, you may have heard these words before. I've definitely heard these words way too much. Yeah, so get to my next slide. This is where I drop my jokes in. Is that all bullshit? Well, look. No, I'm not at liberty as a staff member of UNSW and of the School of Computer Science and Engineering to answer the question of is that all bullshit, while I also don't want to lie. So I want to simplify this thing, right? I want to give you something that you can use and you can use immediately, and not something that you're going to need several years to be able to use, and not something that you're always going to have to go back and look up textbooks to be able to use. Because what I find is that what we do when we're working is we use things that exist when we're working, and the only stuff that exists when you're in the middle of a project you're working is what you can remember off the top of your head. So this is my slogan. I came up with it in 2017 when I was teaching people how to make computer games, and it was just 4 words. I would yell it at my class and they understood it because I taught them what this means. It's called make thing, make good. That's it. It's so simple, right? But it means a lot. So make something and make it good. Those things are connected, but you don't do them at the same time. What you do is you try things. So you just make something. You make anything, but you make it so that it's reasonably complete and you can find out if it's good. And if it's not good, you make it good. And so you just make something and then try to make it good. It's not good, make something else. Try to make that thing good. Make it again. Make it again differently from previously to make it good, right? And it's just, it's it's this kind of thing where if you just repeat that in your head, if you haven't got anything made, then make something, right? Make sure you can make something at least. But if you've got something made, do you know whether it's good or not? Try to make it good, right? So that's it. That's all you need to do. And Sam's saying that this approach extends far beyond engineering as well. 100% agree. 100% agree. This is how we write. This is how we make art. This is how we make music. I just did all creative things there. It's like all the other creative things that I do, I learned a lot that got me to the point where I could say this about engineering as well. Because engineering, creative problem solving is creative. It's a process like that. So I like this idea, and I want this to kind of resonate in your heads, because I think that this you can remember, and I like the idea of being able to remember simple things that then tie back to us being able to remember the more complicated things. Because this whole process is going to be like, let us find a reason to make something, right? If we find a reason to make something, then everything we do in a process, like we have like an idea. So this is the startup thing, right? I have an idea that I want to make the world better for a particular demographic of the population who has a particular problem that I've identified. If I always remember that what I'm doing is serving those people with this app that I'm making, then I will judge all of my decisions about my business, all my decisions about our development and our process and stuff on that idea. Are we serving those people? So make it good. That's it, right? And so if we are meeting those goals, and then like it gives us like an anchor point that we can revolve around, in a sense. We can say, okay, we're just doing things for those people. That's it. This was really easy when we were making computer games, because it was like we're entertaining our core demographic. And I was like, cool. But apps are the same. It's like we do have a core demographic of people we've chosen for this thing. And we can make it good. And good then gets this more detail in it, right? Okay, so that's my kind of like my manifesto, which is like as simple as it can be, but it will resonate through everything that we're gonna do. What are people saying there? Chewy says, just do it. Nicole likes the motto, and Sam says, yeah, you're thinking of writing when I said that, yeah. And you have your guitar with you right now, yeah, totally. So it's a thing, like, especially, like, you'll notice this if you have to write essays for university and stuff like that. You're always better off just putting pen to page or typing, and not editing the words as they come out of your head. Just let them appear, and then only when you've finished sections, like reasonably large sections, do you go back and edit. If you edit things before they come out of your fingers, you're more likely to just kind of paralyze yourself and not create any content. So it's totally like that. Okay, so first phase, deciding what to do. How do you decide which part of the world you want to change? I love saying it like that. This is literally what you want to do. If you want to make something, then you are intending to change the world. And I think this is something that we always we shy away from a lot of the time, the idea that we are changing the world by our actions. But the intention to create a software project of some kind must have that effect. I would like to change a part of the world. And you can choose, right? You can choose a very, very small part of the world if you want to. Like, that's totally fine. Or you can say the part of the world that I want to change is in myself and my team. I'll put a group of people together and we're just going to learn from this experience. We don't need to make something. But if you do want to make something, it's cool, right? It makes you feel better because you're fulfilling the idea that you may have a purpose in this. So what part of the world do you want to change? And the way that I go about finding a part of the world that I want to change is this, which I think is important. Start with something that means something to you, right? It's really weird if you start with something that you have no idea about or you don't care about, right? You're probably not going to make a great project if you don't care about the arena that you're working in or something like that. So start with something that means for you and look for a gap. And the gap is the idea that there is a problem in this space that you're in, or there's an opportunity there to make something interesting. So I thought of one just the other day. because a piece of news came out. There is an opportunity right now to make, I don't know, I would say minimum millions, maximum billions of dollars right now. And it's an online porn service, basically. Did anyone hear the news? OnlyFans is no longer going to be serving porn. And like, and I love that. It was so funny. Like the tweets about it, like people were just laughing so hard about the tweets about this, which was that what was it? That like OnlyFans not doing porn is like McDonald's no longer serving burgers, right? I love the comments. The comments have just caught up. Um, yeah, and Brandon's like time to watch cooking and fitness on OnlyFans. Like seriously, OnlyFans is like I don't know why they're doing it. Like they're just killing themselves. So it's like a platform that has like I actually like to the point where I looked at OnlyFans and I thought hey, this could be a cool platform for doing stuff like miniature painting on. I could get people to be like, oh, they'll subscribe and stuff, and I'll show them techniques and things. And then after a while, it's like, oh no, I can't be on this platform. I was like, this platform appears to have a single use, and they're turning off their own use. So I don't know. I don't know what. There must be some massive external pressure forcing them to do this. But yeah, basically, there are a whole lot of people out there who have gotten very used to making a great deal of money. So moving a whole lot of money through this platform, based on just serving their porn to the world, which is like totally fine, right? That's a way to make money. It's good. Only that platform is about to disappear. So you want to make $1 billion right now, make a platform. Get in quick, make the platform that replaces OnlyFans take their clients, because they're kicking out their own clients. So all of these people are looking for something to replace it now. Like I can see this huge opportunity right now. I'm not taking up that opportunity, because like if I was gonna take up that opportunity, I probably wouldn't be telling all of you about that right now. But yeah, so I love it. I'm just looking at like the chat now. Everyone's like, I guess the payment providers have told them that they couldn't. So that's oh, like Tumblr had the same thing. Tumblr. Oh, I remember hearing about this. Tumblr like took all explicit material off Tumblr and they dropped their value. Like they ended up at 5% of the market value they'd been before that, because everyone just stopped using it, right? It was something like that, right? Anyway, so that's one thing. And people saying, yeah, influencers are going to lose a whole lot of money. Oh, MasterCard and Visa cracking down on being used by platforms. Right, because they think those platforms might be supporting abuse because they don't have moderation. Interesting. Wow. This is weird. I mean, this opens up huge kind of like, I'm not, like, I am your computing lecturer, I am not your sociology lecturer or your politics lecturer, but there's something going on here. I can smell it, but I don't have the expertise to analyze it. But anyway, look for a gap. So as I said, I'm not exploiting this particular gap because I don't really have, I don't have a stake in, strangely enough, I don't have a stake in serving online pornography. Everyone wants me to start an OnlyFans for chicken, but she's been naked the whole time and no one's complained, so I don't know, I've gotten away with it. And don't tell me to shave her. I hate hairless cats, I can't handle it, those Sphinx cats. Anyway, oh, Minol, isn't UNSW on a holiday? Yeah, this is not a lecture. This would be a great lecture if I'm just like, hey, make the new OnlyFans. Seriously, just find a payment system that won't use those credit card companies. Do it all in Bitcoin. I mean, shit, fuck, whoever's taking what I'm saying now and starting developing right now, can you please give me some kickbacks when you're a billionaire? Because like, I've already got the whole setup. Like, I've already just started the entire process on that. Anyway, that is not the case study that I was bringing into this lecture. I had something much more benign, not entirely benign, but more benign, that I was going to talk about. So I was going to talk about, like, say, for example, me looking at what part of the world that I spend time in and that I think that I could do something with. Because what I've shown you on this slide is not necessarily a concrete example of what to do. It's just an idea. So I'll give you a case study, which is not OnlyFans. It's only one step away, though. So my example for finding something that I want OnlyFans Let's Play stream, I think, you know, I've got one copyright strike from YouTube, but I think I would get much worse than that if I did an OnlyFans let's play any percent OnlyFans. Anyway, so here's the example I'm actually going to use. The example I'm going to use is Genshin Impact. So based on this stream, I got into Genshin Impact. I think it was Halogen who wasn't even playing Genshin, just mentioned it. And I thought, you know, I'd looked into this game like when it came out, and I hadn't played it because I didn't like it on mobile. And then I installed it on PC, and I got caught up in it. I was like, oh, this is really great. This is cool. So Genshin, as you may or may not know, is a game basically about collecting really cute anime characters, and them having a slightly predatory system for how you collect these characters, where you have to win sort of RNG, random number generator situations, in order to get characters that you want. So the way to alleviate the odds and make the odds better for you is to put money into the system. And the company that made Genshin is now one of the richest game companies in the world, because they have hit this system perfectly, and they have brought it to the West in a way that most Asian game companies, well, I say Asian, but I mean Chinese companies, had not been able to do before. Because the Japanese companies have, like, totally stomped the Western companies of games for decades, so that's not the comparison. But the Chinese game developers are hitting their stride now. Anyone seen Black Myth Wukong trailer? My god, that game looks just, like, technically, like, superb. Oh, Halogen, it wasn't you. Just mentioned after someone else. You're the memorable one. Yeah, I don't remember who else it was who said that as well. Zero said Genshin isn't a game, it's a loot box simulator. Yes, I would agree with that. I'm actually part of Genshin Soc at UNSW, and we get together to just watch each other gamble every couple of weeks when they release new stuff. It's pretty funny. Chicken Schnitty said you are writing a C program to take payments right now for the OnlyFans replacement. No, seriously, it's a huge opening. I'm not sure who is jumping on it, but someone must be already. I'd expect one of the big companies to be looking into this. Although maybe the big companies won't. I reckon it'll be someone smaller and faster who we don't know yet. But anyway, Pokey Society. Yeah. So, let's think about this Genshin project. So, this is a hypothetical. I'm not making this because it already exists. But again, I have this question here. Does it already exist? Is that important? I will talk about that in a second. I have so many waifus and husbandos, but I can't organize them. That's my problem, right? So what we're doing is, the first thing I did was I looked into a space that I know something about and that I have some passion for. Happens to be Genshin. There are much healthier things to have a passion for, but at the moment I'm playing lots of Genshin, so whatever, you know, it's fun. It's for me, it's been good in lockdown because it has these daily quests that you do, so it gives me a rhythm. It's nearly like daily meditation. You log on, you do your dailies, and then you go off and do something else. Like, it's interesting that I heard that psychologically having a ritual is good when you're in something like a lockdown where you can't have your work ritual happening in the same way and stuff. So anyway, so the game gives you lots of stuff. Well, by give, I mean it gets you to pay and then you get lots of stuff, but whatever. You end up with lots of stuff. There are so many options and variations, and it becomes overwhelming. You'd be like, each of these things can be developed based on what you do in the game. But the different options for what you do in the game, there's so many different things that you could do, and it's like, how much time do you have to do all these things, or which things do you actually want to develop? Like, which characters do you want to develop, or which items do you want to develop and stuff? It makes it just kind of like, you can get to the point where you look at your inventory and just go, oh, I've got no idea what I'm doing. You know, I don't know what to do in this game. So why don't we organize this? Why don't we help people with a planner or an organizer or something like that? And when we're doing this, this is the seed of the idea. And you see, the way that I found this idea was, I said, what's a space that I'm in? So I would like to start easy by saying, I know the space already. You know, I would potentially use this thing. It makes it easier to start working on things when you're coming up with an idea, if you're not immediately going to fall into pitfalls of people who don't understand the domain, as we would call it, the area that we're working in. So I understand Genshin because I've been playing it every day for, I don't know, 2 months now or something like that. Not a huge amount every day, but at least I've always been on every day to do my little daily things. Then I've seen one of the issues that could be there, and I've said, I could fix this. You know, I could fix this with an app if I had the time to make it, which I certainly don't. But if I did, I could fix this totally. And then the question is, does this already exist? The answer to that is yes. Lucas said, not me playing right now. Chicken Chinny said, haven't played Genshin, but I thought it was like an anime Overwatch or something. Oh, it's not really. It's like, it's a bit like if you took Breath of the Wild, but you made it so that you could collect like 30 or 40 characters, and each one of those characters could potentially cost you $100 each. I say potentially, not necessarily, but that's it. Like, so the gameplay, the first kind of gameplay design pass they did copied Breath of the Wild. It's not an exact copy, but it's heavily inspired. You know, they were just like, hey, that gameplay loop's really nice. People like the exploring and the going around and maybe the crafting and stuff. And they took that, and then they took all the gear and they said, why don't we put all this behind a gacha system? You know, gacha, which is like the Japanese things where you put your 100 yen or 500 yen in, you press the button and a little ball comes out and you open it up and you have a random thing that was out of the possibilities from that gacha machine. The game's like that. So you put your real world money in, which you've traded in for in-game currency so that you don't remember how much you're spending. Then you make a roll on the thing and then you might get something. For me, it's a really, really chill game because I have been extraordinarily lucky in a really weird way. Genshin Sock is like, they make fun of me because I have what they call streamer luck. So I get them to watch me doing pulls and I always get what I want with much less investment than anyone else gets it, which I find deeply ironic because out of everyone in that society, I'm the only one with like the full-on like full-time salary. So it's just really funny. Like, I'm the one who probably could just be spending hundreds of dollars in this, yet the people who, like, I'm getting stuff where I don't need to spend that money, which is quite funny. Kaichi asked, how much money have I spent on that game? I think I spent about $200. Maybe 250, I would say, which is more than I would spend on a normal game, but not too bad if you consider like what I've done with MMOs and stuff like that. And also my current disposable income, my inability to go on holiday and stuff like that, that's actually pretty chill. I'm still saving heaps of money because my salary is not going to any of the things it would normally go into, like going outdoors, eating at a restaurant or anything like that. So I actually have disposable income. Nicole said, this sounds worse than a gambling addiction. Yeah, it is. It presses all the same buttons, which is why there's a significant amount of legislation in many governments of the world trying to stamp out this kind of game design. So yeah, it's definitely an issue. Anyway, we have digressed. So getting back to this was an example of something that we could do. So let's just get away from the gambling side of it and say you have lots of stuff that maybe you purchased on purpose. But it's overwhelming trying to figure out what to do, so let's have a plan. So when you're coming up with a project, you can hit this point pretty quickly. Because you can hit this point where you go, like, for example, oh, I love OnlyFans. And I hate that it's not going to have any porn anymore. I need to make something so that all these people delivering their porn will have a platform where, where credit card companies can't kick them off the platform, right? So we've already hit that point, and then we go, does this already exist, or is that even important? Does this exist is a question that you ask based on what you want to get out of this project. So this is you personally, not the people you're serving, your clients, or the potential audience, the demographic that you're trying to help. So if it already exists and you're trying to make money out of it, then you're in trouble, right? If you're not bringing a new idea to the table, then it means you have to do something better than what people have done before, which is much harder than bringing something new. But bringing something new involves some form of inspiration, because the odds of you having thought of something that someone else hasn't thought of is pretty low when it comes down to it. Again, why I say think about something in a field that you know, because it'll be easier. So if you're trying to make money out of it, then does this exist is really important. Because if it already exists and you're trying to make money out of it, then you've got to make sure that you can find a slice of the market to hit. So this is very much when I'm talking about startups. When I'm talking about learning about engineering, because the initial question for this was not, can we start up a company and like take over the world with our new app? The question was this, can we do some student side projects? We want to think of cool things that we could make in order to learn more about the engineering process or programming and stuff. This, for example, yeah, I would totally do a Genshin planner for this. I know it exists. It's literally open on my other monitor right now. Like, people have a web planner for planning what you're going to do next with your characters. And so I don't mind if it already exists, because I'm not making this for use. I'm making this so that I can learn the process of building something. So you choose your goals in this project, and then you decide what you want to do with it. GameStop disposable income, never heard of it. I apologize. I know my demographic here is largely students, and I know that it's very hard to make income at the moment. Twaka's actually working on something at the moment, a Discord bot that organizes things for a game, except it uses really bad memory systems, so probably rewriting it this break. Yeah, cool. So you're actually further along in the process. You've already identified something that you wanted to do. And a lot of the time we do things for ourselves, in a sense. So I asked this question now, who is this project for? And the answer is me. It's always for me. So yes, okay, for starters, you might consider yourself the user. The user is the person that after the app is finished is the person that's going to be regularly using it, logging in, doing something with it, that kind of thing. But if you want to make something that's just, that has more use, that has more resonance, that maybe is even more fulfilling for you as a project, think about other people as well. How do you not just serve yourself, but how do you help other people? Like, generally, when we make something, we're not going to be like, this thing is exactly just for me to use. And if other people want to use it, they do what they want, which is fine. Like, some apps are like that. Some apps are like nearly like, even in companies, like in-house things that you and 3 other people are going to use. But even then, there's a couple of other people. It's actually very rare to write any software that only you are going to use. So this is where we start. What are we talking about here? Everyone's like end user. Edels asks, does this exist? A high-level search engine that tells you if your idea is original or not. Great for patent sharks. I very much doubt it. I think it takes, whatchamacallit? It takes a great deal of expertise to figure out what people are currently working on and stuff like that. Okay. Joseph said this is how Unix started. Yeah. Unix is probably one of the greatest pieces of engineering of the last century. An entire system for running computers that was configurable by people. Actually, no, I would nearly say Linux is the one. The jumping point from when it was just like an operating system and when it became a publicly owned operating system, I think is a massive kind of effort. Like an unmanaged group of engineers putting it together. That's huge. Anyway, okay, back to what I'm talking about. So you could be the user, but how do you want to help other people? So if you want to help other people, do you know how they need help? And this is like there's an entire field here, right? There's an entire field of study here where it's all about trying to figure out what people actually need and trying to figure out how you can give them what they need. And this is super, super difficult because the entire like idea of it is like, how do you even know what people need? And you go, well, I just asked them. And it's like, we know this already, right? We know this. If you ask people stuff, they're going to tell you what they think, but they're not actually going to tell you what they need. Like, for example, if you asked me, Mark, you need an app to assist you with Genshin. How many hours a day do you spend playing Genshin? I'll be like, oh, I don't know, like 1 hour and stuff. And it's like he spends 8 hours a day in game. It's like, no, of course not, right? You know, people, whether it's intentionally or not, are gonna lie to you when you're asking them about stuff. So sometimes it's interesting because you want to figure out what behavior patterns and stuff you're supporting or helping and stuff like that. Yeah, Moni's like, you think you want this, but you really need this. And it's like, Tawaxa, that's you with Stardew Valley. Yeah, I'm only there half an hour a day. It's like 6 hours later, you're like... But, you know, you always kind of are going to keep coming back to this of like, why did this project start? You thought there was something you wanted to help with. You thought that there was something you wanted to contribute. Make sure it does contribute, you know? So, you... Oh, Lucas burnt yourself out on Genshin a few months back, but you're back on the grind now. Moni says you can get help. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're trying to figure out who we're helping and what help they need. So one of the best things that we can do for this is we step away from this idea, who's this project for? It's for me. And we step into someone else's shoes. Even just one person. Even if we just step out of our head and into someone else's head, that's actually a massive upshift in our capability to create something. I remember hearing, I've forgotten the name. It was a Japanese game designer who made, I can't remember which game, but it was like an indie game. It was reasonably famous. And they made it for their grandmother. So they specifically made a game for their grandmother. And what that did was it took their expertise, shifted it into a completely different perspective, and they made a game for the things their grandmother likes. And it ended up super interesting because it's a melding of two different viewpoints and personalities. This is why the more interesting teams that you can build for making software have a really wide range of personal experience in them. So if people have lived different lives and they're all on the same team, the software is much more likely to be able to cater for lots of different people. This is why people are like specifically hiring in software for diversity nowadays, because they realize that like it's an automatic bonus for the quality of your software. You don't leave as many demographics out. You can then sell to more people. You know, it's interesting. Anyway, so what I'm gonna do for this thing, what do people say? Hussein spent 9 years making Pokemon Uranium, then you were yeeted by Nintendo in under a week. And people are talking about Stardew Valley now. Talk to Shrey as well. Like, I don't know if he's around at the moment. He apparently loves Stardew Valley and gets into it. I haven't played that much. I played a lot of Animal Crossing, and I know that they're similar, but I haven't played much Stardew Valley. But anyway, so my case study continuing, now that I've gone from idea to trying to figure out who I'm helping and how I'm helping them, is Genshin Whales. So the whale is the terminology for someone who spends a lot of money on Genshin. I think I'm technically a whale because I'm in the hundreds of dollars. Like, you know, AAA games are not usually supposed to cost that much, like 100 with a season pass kind of thing and DLCs maybe, but like I've already spent more than that. So that makes me officially a whale. They have this funny scale of like a goldfish is someone who's occasionally put money in at some point, and a dolphin is someone who regularly buys like monthly packs and stuff like that. And then a whale is the person that goes beyond that, which I've done. Anyway, this is the person I'm thinking of, which is awkward because it's also me. But anyway, this is my demographic. So I spent so much money and now I have too many digital toys. I've spent money and now I have stuff. How do I know what to do with it all? And then this is where we start delving a little deeper here and we say, what are these whales doing? These people who have everything, is there a way they prioritize which of their digital toys they want to play with? is there stuff that was like the things that cost them lots of money? They spent $200 on this one sword or something like that. But other stuff was free stuff, which is for those commoners. And we don't bother playing with that stuff. We want to play with this stuff. How do we help them to prioritize one or the other, you know? Can we then, you know, give them a process to save which things that they want to prioritize versus which things they don't want to prioritize. And each of these things they spent money on, they have to play certain things in the game to upgrade them, you know. And so can we give them, you know, examples of what thing they should be doing next, you know? So it's like, you should go and kill this particular boss because it drops the thing for you to upgrade your $200 sword, which is going to be, you know, 10% more effective than the $0 sword. It's literally the case. That's how it works. Anyway, so can we help these people plan? And this is a really great target audience because they're obviously rich. They're probably going to throw some money our way. They're not. Don't worry. Like, you know, sometimes look at your audience for how much money you can extract from them. Sometimes that is entirely immoral, and look to your audience and try to just help them with something so that their lives get better. Generally, if you're trying to help people with their problems, they will give back money. And if all you're trying to do is extract money from them, you may be successful in the short term, but eventually you'll probably lose out. That's me just trying to turn this back into, like, maybe you be good people. Maybe try a little, hopefully, you know. Because I'm talking back and forth about a whole bunch of different things at the moment. Like, maybe that whole OnlyFans thing is stopping people from being exploited, but I don't know. Like, everything that I've heard about it is like, it just looks like people have found an alternative source of income, especially in a lockdown and like pandemic situation. They can just stream from home and get paid for it. And all that's happening is they're having their income taken away from them. I don't know. Anyway, so I figured out who I'm making this thing for, and I know something about their behavior patterns. I could go into more detail, right? This gets much deeper. I can go in and I can talk to them. I can, like, watch them getting new equipment and then organizing it, and I can see how they do it and how we can help it. You know, we look at their behaviors and we try to see how our app can match their behaviors, because we don't want people to have to change their behavior for the thing that we're making. Like, people changing for the machines are supposed to adapt to the people. If we're building the machine should help the people, right? That's basic design for humans. So that's what we want to do, right? We want to see the way they do things, and we say, how do we assist you in the way that you're doing things so that you don't have to do things this laborious mechanical way or something like that, right? This is how we got to this point, was saying, okay, this is the thing, is like, I have too many things and I want to organize them. And then we expand that to, like, this entire group of people has this same problem. How do we make this work for them? So once we've got that, we've got the idea that we've got we've got a problem that we want to solve, or an opportunity that we want to create, and we've figured out who's going to benefit from this, and we think, okay, that's right, we'll make it for them. That's good. And if it's an entertainment thing, it's like, these are the people we want to entertain, people who haven't experienced with certain things, you know. So we're getting to the point where we have a target, and once you have a target, once you know exactly what you're aiming for, you have a goal for your project, you can make a plan to then start to reach it. Let's take a short break and see what everyone's saying here. Clarissa was like, what? I thought you were free to play a month ago. I was never free to play. I was always buying the monthly packs minimum, and I bought a $50 top up at the beginning, which was like, here's my, I'll buy like the price of a normal game from you. And then I topped up a big one. I topped like $160 top up for fun, for shits and giggles. But anyway, I don't put huge amount. Lucas is saying community definition of a whale is anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. Yeah, no, I'm nothing. I'm nowhere near that. Bernie was like, so you're saying decent human equals money? Decent human does often equal money, but like, as everyone's being a bit cynical about that in comments, you'll find that a lot of the companies who are genuinely paying attention to what people need and filling some kind of need in people's lives get a lot of goodwill money from the people who are getting things from them. I don't know though. I think there's other things that people are doing that just make shitloads of money, and they don't help anyone with anything. So if you just want to make shitloads of money, you can probably find a way to extract it from people while destroying their lives. I'm thinking about the entire pokies industry. This is nothing, literally nothing positive comes out of that industry at all. So, yeah. But I don't know if this is entirely in vain. I'm trying to convince people to do things that make the world better, even though you can make money from making the world worse, which is just the trend for humanity at the moment. But we can do better, I think. Anyway, that's my stand, and that's the hill that I will die on, frankly. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think all the comments are just about that, though. And Luke's is saying, yeah, most indie developers are good people. So, like, there's this thing of, like, do we play the latest gigantic blockbuster video game knowing that the majority of the companies making them are abusing their employees one way or another? Or do we start looking elsewhere? Do we start looking at these teams of 2 or 3 people to put their heart and soul into something and just hoping to maybe get enough money to pay rent and stuff like that? It's like, well, you feel like you know who you want to support, but it's very, very hard not to pull the trigger on those big budget games with their big marketing and all this kind of stuff. Right? So, I'm not going to tell you you can't play things. You can play whatever you want. But there's always, look, it's a struggle. There's always a struggle between trying to care about everything in the world and then just trying to switch it off sometimes and just care about yourself and just kind of make things okay. I've been having a huge amount of trouble for the past, I don't know how long it's been. I would say 2 years between trying to look after myself and trying and giving too much of a shit about like everything else that's going on, trying to make things better for too many people. Like, I think that's the educator's dilemma. Is there's like a lot of us literally don't want to leave a single student behind. And every time I hear about individual cases of students who, because like you think about the situation that I'm in when I was taking 1511 term 1 and there were like, the original enrollment was 940 students. We ended up with 840, 10-15% of which failed. 15%, I want to say. So they are like, I've ruined an experience for about 200-300 people. And it's like, how do you live with that, And that's, for me, that's the biggest thing, is like trying to care so much and trying to give so much to people, to give them a chance to learn and give them a chance to build up a really positive attitude towards learning and creating things for the future, while at the same time stamping out dreams for a few hundred of them. And it's like, wow, that's like, when the numbers get that high, it's very, very hard to reconcile. So for me, being a professional educator has been a massive emotional roller coaster. So that's a window into a different world. You will always have these dilemmas in your life. You will have these dilemmas where you care about something, but you are unable to take action on them. And it's hard. It's very hard psychologically to be in that situation. I don't have answers for you. When I find the answers, I will let you know, but I don't have those kinds of answers. Instead, I can teach you about the engineering process where I do have the answers, because I've been through it so many times and I've both taught it and taken people through it. So it's like, yeah. So anyway, that's, people are talking about that, right? So Hussein's like, buy from a local bookstore or support Jeff Bezos taking all your money and just fucking going into space with it. Fucking parasite. Anyway. Every now and then I say what I really think. Anyway. I think people think roughly the same way anyway. Make a rocket, put you back into it. No. Anyway, yeah, people Brandon's saying a fail rate's that high in uni. Fail rates are only that high in introductory courses. So I would expect I'm teaching graphics next term. I'm expecting the fail rate to be really low because like it's not the entire population of computer science, and people are taking that subject out of genuine interest and stuff. And so I'm expecting this to be the band of students who wanted to put effort in, and the band of students who weren't experimenting with seeing if computing was for them. Because there's plenty of people who are like, highly intelligent, highly motivated people, but for the moment right now, C programming, for example, doesn't click with them. They may need some more experience. They may need some other things to do. They may need to come back with a fresh perspective, and then they'll pass it, right? But jumping in for the first go, you do have a pretty high fail rate, I think. Because I don't know, I haven't taught enough other subjects to like do statistical studies on fail rate in other subjects. But the fail rate's pretty high because it's not easy. The first time you learn something from scratch, it's not easy. Jumping from, say, Comp 1511 to any of the following subjects, so 2511, 1521, 1531, 2521, all four of those you can do directly after 1511. They're all going to leverage the experience that you had in 1511 in one way or another. So it just makes it instantly easier. But the first subject is always hard. And there's that barrier to entry to be able to study in that field, right? So it's difficult. So yeah, anyway, that's why the fail rates are pretty high. Conversely, the high distinction rates are also incredibly high. It's not a bell curve at all. I've talked about this before, right? Because there's a significant percentage of people who go into 1511 only having needed a small part of the subject. Like the whole first 5 weeks they can ignore and they'll probably get away with it. So these are the people, some of you are here, I know you, who have been programming since they were like 5 years old. And some of them took 1511 even after being offered an exemption from it. Other people took 1511 because they thought there was something they could gain from it. And I hope they gained something, even if they were technically capable of teaching themselves the whole course. Because I try to teach things that aren't programming in 1511, as you know. Stuff like this I could have thrown into 1511 if I wanted to. I chose the professionalism talk instead. But yeah, so you get this weird bump in both failures and high distinctions. So people who had, before they'd taken the course, already decided that computing was their entire life, right? A lot of them are going to get high distinctions. Other people who haven't decided yet if computing is even for them, and they find out during that it's like, not right now. Maybe later in life. You never write this stuff off, but not right now. And they're like, okay, fine, I'll drop it or fail. That's why the drop rate's so high. And then everyone else kind of spreads out in between, and they form a normal bell curve in between these two pillars of statistics. Anyway, yeah, Antarctica was like the head start is a real advantage. Yeah, totally. And I guess maybe that's the good thing about me publicizing my lectures. Like all my lecture content is public on YouTube, so people can get a whole way into that course on their own, without even kind of needing to be enrolled. Strangely enough, this is what the real world is like. For me to teach things, I had to learn things, and I need to learn new things, and so I just look it up. Like, unfortunately. And also when you're working and they're like, can you do this? And you're like, no, I can't do that. And they're like, oh, no, we weren't asking whether you can do it now. We're asking you to do it. And you're like, oh, how long have I got? And they go, that's cool. You've got a week. And you go, oh, okay. I'm spending this entire week on the internet finding out how to do that thing there, right? So that'll happen. Yeah. So anyway, Tawaka's like statistics case study on fail rates. I did actually, there was a project that I wanted to do that I haven't done, which is survey only the students who didn't complete a course, whether they didn't complete through failure or they didn't complete through dropping out, and just find out why. because I think that's information that UNSW doesn't gather, and it's far more important than the information from the people that finished, especially in first year courses like that. It would be cool to do that kind of thing, but again, it would be cool to do so many things. I don't have time for any of this stuff. So anyway, what are people saying? Oh, Sam's excited for graphics. I'm happy. Graphics is full and has a massive waiting list at the moment. I'm trying to figure out if I can add more tutors and add more people, but I also don't want to kill myself, which I have been doing for 2.5 years with 1511 at massive numbers. So I committed to graphics being a medium-sized course at 250 students, as opposed to like 1511 being a completely unsustainable mess at 1000 students, which it's always going to be from now on, which is just, it's just stupid, but you know, we do what we have to. Yeah, so I say 250 is medium. 250 used to be extraordinarily large, but like university grows and we just deal, right? Anyway, that's been a long enough break. Let's try to get back into what we're doing here. What are people asking? JT said, are those lectures part of UNSW work? Not sure which lectures you're talking about. Was it the lectures that I have publicized online? Maybe. What are other people saying? Brandon's, I tried to start watching The Holiday before I took 1511, and then I got lazy. Yeah, that happens. Look, we all get, like, I tried to start preparing graphics months ago, and then I got lazy as well. It's just a human thing. It's fine. We'll deal with it. David was asking, can you take graphics whatever course you're in? I don't know if it's an elective that you can take from outside of computing. I think it's like there is a barrier to entry in that graphics has a prerequisite, as Jack's saying, a prerequisite of Comp 2511. I'm a little open with that prereq. If you have the capability to do graphics but not that prereq, then talk to me. I know I've just committed to receiving 5,000 emails, but you know, it's my responsibility. I've waived the prereq for 2 people already. Having said that, they're just still in the queue, so they're not getting in unless I add more tutorials to the course, but I may do that. I'll talk to my tutors about it and see what their time availabilities are. Jack just dropped it. There you go. There's a space. The one person just got in. Okay, let's get back to the talk. Because I've gone off on one of my usual tangents, but that is the benefit of live streaming instead of being in a genuine lecture. Okay, so we have, at this point of the process, figured out an idea that we want to explore and figured out who it might be for, and we're starting to build up an exact profile of the things that they may want to do with this app, which means we can start thinking about how to actually make something. So we are now closer to what we're going to make. And the reason, we know the reason why. So the reason why is people bought too much stuff and it's confusing them. We will provide a means for them to organize and plan the stuff they have. So this is specific to the case study. We'll do something like keep track of what their goals are, what they need, and then they can plan their gameplay. So we can think about what this app needs to do. So what we're going to do now is, up until this point, we've been looking at this thing from a distance. We've been looking at this thing conceptually. We've been thinking about human behavior. We've been thinking about a demographic. We've been thinking about a problem domain, which is like, you know, the game of Genshin and the stuff that you get and how you want to do it. And now we need to get into details. So now we get into like very similar to the kind of things that I've talked about heaps, and I think a lot of people have learnt about already, which is like problem solving. So you have a goal, which is an app that does such and such, and you have to think, how are we going to make an app that does that? We need to break this app into its pieces and say we need to build these components. So we say we're going to break this down into, like, I don't know, some kind of database of equipment, some kind of future progress planner, some kind of knowledge of what each of those items in the database actually needs in order to upgrade itself, you know, all that kind of stuff. This is like this deep planning where you need to start writing a whole lot of stuff down. If you do kind of official engineering stuff, this is the point where diagrams appear. And I know from past experience that the way that we teach diagrams can very often be done very badly, very easily. It's very easy for a teacher to slip into teaching how to make diagrams in a really bad way. He's saying there should be a post results, post exam, my experience. Yeah, I think the reason they don't do that is so that, like, there's this combination of things so that when you know you failed the subject, you can't just automatically mark it badly. And also, they do specific things where they don't give us the results until after we've handed in the marks, so that we can't change the marks if we can identify students in the exams. There's all this kind of security stuff going on, like this totally like game theory security stuff going on in my experience. I don't look into it too deeply, I just like let it happen. But yeah, I think there's other ways to do things. What are other people talking about? First year maths is terrible. Oh, I'm sorry. I only have friends who did first year maths and I'm scared. Lucas said get new friends. Anyway, charts and flow charts, UML diagrams, all this kind of stuff. And so one of the biggest mistakes that we can make when we're teaching people about engineering is that we teach them how to do a UML diagram, for example, and we don't teach them what you use it for. Or we do a data flow diagram, we don't teach people why it exists and stuff. And this stuff, like those diagrams are super useful. Like the number of times that I've been part of a dev team and we'll look at each other and go, hey, which bit am I working on? Which is a really bad thing to say in front of your manager, but you have to say it, right? If you don't know, you're like, which bit am I working on? They're like, the chart. You see the chart and the section with the big line across it that says Marc? Marc is on this side of the chart, and it's like, oh, cool. So I link up with your API there, right? And it's like, can we talk about that? And you sit down, you talk about someone, and they go, okay, this is how I feed you information through that API. And you go, oh, sweet. So that's the information I get, which is exactly what I need to do the thing that I was doing yesterday. I just forgot, and it's fine. Actually, don't hide stuff from your manager. It makes it harder for them to do things. They usually don't mind, actually. If you just go, I have no idea where I'm up to, what I'm doing, they're like, oh, that's cool. Let's go into this, because that probably means for them, they're like, I need to adjust what I'm doing to make sure that my staff know what I'm doing. So that whole joke about don't tell your manager, don't do that. Healthy work environment has fully open communications. Jack's like UML. But yeah, like UML can be really useful. Actually, it's used heaps in networking protocols, because it's like this thing, then this thing, then this thing and stuff. Wait, is that UML or data flow? I don't know. I don't care. I just, when I make diagrams, I just draw things and go, this is connected to this and stuff. I'm very informal about it, but so long as you and the rest of your team understand what it means, it's okay. But usually you just end up talking about things. But anyway, what I'm talking about here is the idea that you don't start breaking down into parts, building code components and things like that until you knew what your goal was. Because each part that you're making must serve a purpose for the people you want to help, or for the goal that you want to achieve. If this bit of the program doesn't appear to have any benefit for the people, then you need to question it. You just go, why does this exist if it has no benefit for the demographic that we're making for, that kind of thing. And often it can be like, it's fine. Like, I know this has no direct benefit for these people that we're building the app for, but these other things that we make need this thing to happen. It's like, oh yeah, totally fine. It's just a dependency, which is another graph. Like, you go, these are the things that directly contact our person, and these are the things that must be built for those things to work. And you're like, sweet, okay, now we know why we need everything. Because one of the funniest things that happens mid-project is you look at stuff and you go, okay, we built this, this, and this, and this. And then someone looks at one of the pieces and goes, why is that there? And you go, I don't know. It's like, how much time did we spend on that? It's like, I don't know, 300 person hours? Why? Why does it exist? It was like, we don't know. It's like, is this on the plans somewhere? Is it on another diagram? And in the end, it's just like, we don't know. And it's like, okay, well, it's in the Git repo in case we ever need it. I guess we'll just cut it out of the dev branch and keep going. This happens all the time, by the way. Totally happens all the time. Anyway, so yeah, so this is what we do. And so every component always, this point is the important one. Every component must be checked against the goal, checked against the plan and the goal, and then you see whether it's something you actually need or not. So when we're doing this thing, the whale helper is, if we're going to break this down into parts, it's some kind of inventory planner. So we need some way to store a whole bunch of different items, and for each of those items to have certain statistics and certain categorization and stuff like that. So it's a database, maybe? I don't know. Like, if you want to keep this really simple, it's just like a big array of objects. If you want to keep it super simple, it doesn't have to be like a SQL or something like that, but maybe that would be useful. An official database can be useful because you can view it from different angles, and you can go, from this context we look at weapons, from this context we look at upgrades for weapons, and then we see the dependency. You can put that into the database. These decisions are decisions that you will make. I will never be making these decisions for you as someone who is covering the engineering process from like such a distance. You know, like if I'm going to show the whole process in 2 hours, I'm not going into detail. But anyway, it's like, these are the questions you're going to get. So if I want to do this whale helper for Genshin has hundreds of items, right? Is there an API for this? Could we just like plug into the game and it will tell us what inventory someone has? Short answer is no. I don't think Genshin has something like that. But Genshin does have open statistics for a bunch of stuff. Like, you can actually go plug in a website link into something else, and it tells you all of the gear you've ever collected in the game. It's like, I was surprised when I saw that it was that open. But yeah, so maybe there is an API for that. Check on those things, right? This is where you start going into those details and going, does this stuff exist? We need people to be able to interact with this thing. We need them to be able to update what they have. This is where we go back to the things that we have studied originally about these people, and we've said, what are their behavior patterns? What they like to do? Do they like to talk about the things they've just gotten? Which things do they pay attention to? What is their daily ritual in this game? How do we like put ourselves into that daily ritual in a way that helps them and they will understand without us getting in their way or forcing them to change their behavior? You know, the best apps are the ones that just slide into your daily life and you don't realize that they're helping you. I mean, maybe like, I'm trying to think of one that helps you, but like none of them do. Facebook makes you angry. Twitter makes you angry. Instagram makes you jealous. TikTok just eats your time. There's nothing good about any of them. I'm on all of them, and there's nothing good about any of them. But you know, all of those just kind of slide into your everyday life, and they just become a part of it. So they've obviously studied your behavior patterns prior to their release. Shrey's asking, would most people know what Genshin actually is? I have not talked about what Genshin is in this in this talk. I'm just I'm just talking, but I've said enough, I think, about it in what style of game it is. It's a game where you end up with lots of stuff and it's hard to manage it. I don't know why, Nicole, YouTube wanted me to moderate your post just then. But she's saying that TikTok gives you quick serotonin, helps you forget about your problems while I scroll endlessly for 5 hours. The 5 hours thing, I think, is the problem. But otherwise, I think there is something positive. Like, even like, I'm getting something positive out of Genshin because it's just giving me something to do to distract me from, like, I can just go like that, right? The world right now, if you're living, especially you're living in Sydney or Melbourne, just like, what can you feel other than despair, right? So you kind of need something to distract you from it. So anyway, so back to the process, right? So we're going to break this down into its parts. It needs an inventory planner. Is there an API to do that? What is the user interface? How are people going to interact with it? They want to be able to update their current progress. How do we do this in the easiest way possible? And this is definitely going to need to start writing stuff down, right? All this stuff needs to be kind of put somewhere. So, because your plans are going to get way beyond what you can remember, right? So you want to have like your plan written out, and then you'd be able to go, okay, we do this part of the plan today. Tomorrow we do that part of the plan. It really depends on how long your project goes for. Like, a lot of these projects are going to go for weeks. right? So then not only do you want that, you want a way of planning out how much you're going to do by the time your finish date appears. And finish date is a real hard thing. I'm going to talk about that later. But yeah, trying to figure out what you want to do. We're not even up to like planning which things we're going to do when. We're just actually just putting together the, like, we're just finding out what needs to be done at this stage. And so what we do is we find out what needs to be done, and then we figure out a basic approach for each of these parts. We don't need to actually like do a full whatever cost benefit analysis and time predictions and all that kind of stuff yet. For the moment, we're still just trying to figure out what we're doing. And so I'll give you an example of the scope of the problem. Money deleted TikTok, and the hole in your soul has disappeared, but now there's a hole in your attention span. So here's the scope of the problem of Genshin. This is not all of the stuff in Genshin. This is only some of the stuff. This is characters, weapons, and some of the upgrade bits. This is your inventory in Genshin, separated into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories, which means there's a lot of random stuff in there. This is my actual account, by the way. So those of you that play Genshin can see how much progress someone can make in, I think, 3 months, 2 months or 3 months. I can't remember. Yeah, I've been quite lucky with certain things here. Those of you who play a lot of Genshin will be able to see some of the things that I've gotten that are quite good. Anyway, the example is not really about me flexing my Genshin collection. It's more about why is there so much stuff? Oh, this scrolls, by the way. There is way more than this. This is just an example of the amount of random crap that is in Genshin. Yeah, Lucas noticed. Damn, won a lot of 50-50s. I did not. I did definitely win a lot of 50-50s. So, just me flexing my collection. Yeah, so I have a couple of like really good, like just the top row here, like this, and this are all super top tier characters that I was very lucky to get. Anyway, this is the idea, is you can see that this interface in the game can be really confusing, and it's like, how can we help with this, right? So alright, everyone's going into their Genshin accounts to flex. I think people in general are going to have better stuff than I do in Genshin, because I just haven't been in there that long. But for the time I've been there, I think I have a disproportionately good stuff. So I've been quite lucky so far. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where we picked a problem that we were going to work on. Oh, Chicken's having a little bath. I'm really happy that she's hanging out here today. Anyway, we have figured out a problem that we're interested in helping. We figured out the kind of people we're helping with that problem, and we're trying to figure out how we help them specifically. Then we've said, in order to help those people with that problem, we need to build particular components. And so we've made a plan for the things that we need to build, and we figured out what other things we need to build to support those things and stuff, you know. So we started delving into the possibilities. And then we get to the point where we go, right, now we can start making stuff. And think about this, right? Think about this situation where we're 1.5 hours in. We're not quite 1.5 hours in to this talk. And only now am I saying you might start coding at this point. So the process of making stuff involves spending a lot of time making sure that what you make actually makes sense and is useful to someone. Let me point the finger back at one of my favorite examples of people not making things for people is Juicero. If you've heard of Juicero, it's it's a hilarious Silicon Valley startup where they got some stupid amount, like hundreds of thousands of US dollars seed funding for a cold pressed juicer. And it's a thing where they were shipping packets of juice to people, and the machine was literally doing this. It was grabbing the packet and it was squishing it between two plates, and the whole thing was like Wi-Fi enabled and all this kind of shit. And it was just like, it was an example of like the worst of Silicon Valley startup culture, because it was like, this has no meaning. Like this packet of juice, you could literally just like cut the corner of the packet and squeeze it with your hands. You get the same juice. And it was even funny to the point where like it would scan the pack, and if the pack was out of date, it wouldn't squeeze it for you and stuff. So it was kind of like, you've got it and it's been in the fridge for a while, and you're like, I'm pretty sure it's still fine. I'm just gonna drink it. And the machine's like, no, you're not gonna drink it. And it's like, oh, come on, you know. And just the fact that the machine is just squishing it, right? And it's just like, oh wait, literally what 2511 was about. Was 251 about Juicero? Yeah. So yeah, it's just an entire company in a machine built for no purpose with no demographics. So they weren't thinking about who they were making for. They weren't thinking about what people actually needed. They were thinking about who they could get to invest in them, or what they could actually like just build a company out of. So it's exactly that kind of thing of like, this happens a lot when there's a lot of venture capitalist funding throwing around, is people build a company to get the funding. They don't build a company to make anything useful. They just go, oh, we could get this funding with this idea. And this is exactly what I was saying at the beginning of like, if you don't serve your demographic, then you have no longevity. So they did the short term, they got seed funding, and then they just basically set that seed funding on fire and then ran away, because they were never going to make anything useful because they didn't go through that process. Which is why we have been going for over an hour, and I have not at any stage of this said, oh, now you do some coding and then you'd make this thing, or now you would do some building and you'd make this thing. Even though at the very beginning I said make thing, make good. I'm still going to say, if you don't know why you're making something or who you're making something for, is different with art, by the way. Sometimes with art, it's like, I'm not making something for anyone. I'm making something to express what I feel, which is totally cool when you're making art, and you should do it. Because if you don't express yourself in your art, then your art will be boring, because it'll just be a copy of someone else's. Anyway, side tangent, right? But what I'm trying to make the point that we don't jump in until we understand, right? We understand why something is going to exist, then we jump in. Sinio is talking about OnlyFans. Sinio, have you been here from the beginning? We've been talking about OnlyFans a fair bit tonight. Joseph said Theranos as well was a massive scam. I don't know Theranos. I should look it up. JT said that a YouTuber did a teardown on the machine and found it impressively engineered. I love that. I think that's really funny, is that somewhere in there was a really hardworking engineer who'd been given a specification by someone else and did a really good job with it, but it didn't matter because the specification should never have existed. So that's the funny thing, right? Jackson saying, because coding isn't hard, but coding things that people want in a manner that doesn't make it difficult to add features, that's hard. Totally. That is like if there's only one thing that you get taught in a computer science degree or something, it's that, yeah, we can just rail off a whole bunch of code that does something, but knowing why we're doing it and what it's for, super, super important. Okay, so actually make stuff. So this is where I issue the warning, is like, be careful of jumping too far or too deep. At the point where you start coding, or just before this, when you've been planning things, you can start to get big ideas. Because when we think of the things that we want to make, we think of the apps that we want to make, or the games that we want to make, or the programs that we think we're gonna build and stuff like that. Or, for example, the stories that we want to tell. If we want to take this out of engineering and put it in an artistic perspective, the artwork that we want to create, or the stories that we want to tell, the music we want to create, the things that we absorb in order to make our plans are things that have potentially been made with billions of dollars and teams of hundreds of people. And I'm just going to assume at this stage, because I know my target audience here, is that you don't have billions of dollars or hundreds of people. I don't know if any of my friends from companies that do have that kind of money are here. I very much doubt it, right? So the trick is, you've got to make something you can finish. And this is the point where you have to be like, make thing, make good. If you can't make the thing, then you can never make it good. Don't try to make it too good before you make it, right? So if you pick something and then you accidentally specify, you may accidentally make plans that are too big for you or your group to do, then you'll never make it. But if you plan for something that's very, very easy to do, that doesn't have all of your features yet, you will make that. You can guarantee that you'll make that, and then second phase kind of thing, then you would add more features to it. So I always suggest that, like, when you're getting started in making stuff, plan to finish what you're making in a short amount of time. And finished doesn't mean it has everything, all the bells and whistles you've planned. Finished means the shit runs, right? It's super, super important. The stuff actually runs, and then you can find out what is working and not working in it. And also, it's much easier to find out why something's not working if you haven't written very much. And it's so funny, right? Because as coders, we always think that the number of lines that we've written is like our contribution. I'm saying don't write too many lines. Keep it really, really simple at the beginning so that you know what's happening, especially at the beginning when things are really in flux. You haven't really decided how you're going to approach the plans that you've made. So your first attempt at the approach has a reasonably likelihood of entirely being thrown away. So don't make it perfect. There's no point making it super perfect if you're probably going to throw it away. Make something that's just good enough to see whether it works, refine it later. And I'm not saying code like shit. Okay, I'm not saying code with really bad style because you're going to throw it away later, or code with no plans for error checking and robustness because you're probably going to throw it away. Some of that you can go easy on, but most of the time you still need like the important things. But what I'm saying is don't try to put like, 6 months worth of features in your 2-week prototype, because it's gonna be too much, and then you're gonna end up with nothing. Unfinished is much worse than lacking features. So if you have something that is complete and runs, and you say these features will be added in a later version, perfectly acceptable. If you say we have done 20% of these 8 features and here's this thing that doesn't run because all of these features are unfinished, it's useless. It's literally useless, right? So that's what I'm saying. This is the way that we step up from our way of doing things. Is we have to have the first step has to be easy, has to be able to start it. So this is as close as I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of how you should do things. I mean, I do have another slide about the nitty gritty, but like I'm not going to make too many decisions for you, but I'm going to say that there are definitely easier ways to get going. And what we always do when we have big ideas is we try to accomplish the big ideas. So we'll go maximum effort and try to accomplish the big ideas. But maybe those big ideas shouldn't even be in the project until the project is ready. Maybe there's a lot of fiddly little things that need to be done and tested and stuff before that big core idea that we love actually even ends up in the project. So just be careful of that. We get big eyes when we look at our dream. This is my magnum opus. I will create this thing and it'll be the greatest app I've ever made. It won't be. It'll be a piece of shit. But acknowledge that it will be a piece of shit because, like, we've only just made our plans. We've just had a look at our demographic and made our plans. So the first thing we code is going to be shit. But you've got to commit to it being shit. You can't just be like, there's two attitudes which would be really bad. The first attitude is my stuff is always going to be amazing. If your stuff is always going to be amazing, then you won't acknowledge your own failures. You won't acknowledge your own problems and stuff because you have this belief that your stuff is always amazing. You will end up not doing anything because you think that the only options you have are creating amazing things. You will end up hamstrung by the idea of your own amazingness, and then you won't be able to create anything. Whereas if you be like, some of my stuff has been amazing, some of my stuff is like literally half-assed. But if I start with half-assed and refine it, it could get to amazing. That's a much better attitude. You'll get there with that. The other attitude is my stuff is always shit, so it doesn't matter what I make. That's probably going to lead you in the same direction to not being able to make anything. So find this point in the middle where you can sometimes make good stuff and sometimes make bad stuff. But the only way you can filter between the good stuff and the bad stuff you make is to make lots of stuff. So make lots of things and then check them and then improve them. Again, I come back here, make thing, make good. It's the same thing. It's carrying through the whole process. So that's what I'm saying here. Don't try to make it perfect yet and stuff. Know that you can refine things later. I'm not necessarily saying do things really, really badly from the beginning. What I'm saying is don't try for perfection. Perfection is like, I don't know if people know much about jewelry and stuff like that, but when you're talking about precious stones and things like something like polished diamonds and stuff like that, they're just chunks of rock at the beginning. You got your chunk of rock, it has a lot of potential value, but not until you spend hours and hours cutting and polishing it does it then get value, and then suddenly it has like a whole massive amount of value. And your code and your ideas are the same thing. When they're unrefined, they don't have any value yet. But little bits of work, little repetitive bits of work will slowly take it towards value. Your ideas are the same. Ideas are kind of, this is why people say ideas aren't worth shit. Because like that idea that I had about like taking over from OnlyFans closing down is like, that has no value right now. The only thing that has value is an implementation that is ready to ship. And so in order to make that value from my idea is bullshit, right? Everyone has that idea right now. It's a really simple idea. Like, I would say, you know, I'd say minimum there's like 10,000 people at the moment in Silicon Valley looking at how they could jump on that idea, which is why I'm not going to bother. Someone faster than me is already working. But if we were to actually build this, you know, and refine it and stuff and go through the iterations, meet some porn stars and ask them what they want to do with their app, then we'd be able to build something, right? We'd be able to build something good that meets their needs and stuff and fills the niche that is being left open. But you need to go through that process. You need to take the time and you need to be able to, like, you know, make something easy and then build it up. Anyway, what are people saying? Keep it simple, stupid principle, as Sam is saying. Yeah, writing code that allows you to add features on. Sinio said, is this the story of Tesla? Is that how they got started? I'm not even sure. I haven't really looked into the background of it. Anyway, yeah, so this is where we're going. I've got another slide which is like talking about this kind of detail. So we're progressing on our I'll just move my head out of the way for a second. The swimming whale, which is I've now come up with a cool name for my app, the swimming whale. So I think that's funny. Helping whales navigate the oceans of spent money. I had a lot of fun with these slides. I was making them yesterday with strike through because it made me laugh a lot. Let me just move chicken down a little bit. I won't put her off screen. But okay, so if I'm making this app to help whales deal with Genshin stuff, the first thing that we might do is just an inventory. We're not getting into planning. We're not getting into needs for upgrading and stuff. Let's just make an inventory. Like, let's build a database that supports types, a lot of item types and stuff, and let's do a bit of design on how people interact with it, right? And so that's our baseline, and every problem can be broken down into parts like that, where you can say, okay, let's work on this bit of the project and figure out what we're going to do, because there's a lot of questions that need to be made here. How are we going to design how people interact with it? That is an entire field, and that could be an entire talk that I would give, but it would actually be an entire course. There is one at CSE called HCI, which I actually used to teach. Apparently, up until recently, the stuff I wrote for the tutorials in that course in 2013, 2014, I think, was still in the course. Some of it, not that much of it, but some of it was still there. Which I was happy to hear when I came back to UNSW that my work was still existing somewhere. Anyway, so yeah, designing how people interact with it is going to be necessary. How are we saving and storing this data? Is the way that we're saving and storing this data something that scales and is secure? Like, are we storing it on the user's computer? In which case it is not secure, because if they lose their computer, there's no cloud backup, so they're going to get annoyed at that kind of thing. Does it scale if it is a cloud backup? Can we handle it if thousands of people start using this thing? It's like, usually no. It's like, okay, we have to find a way to deal with that, right? So there's all these these kind of questions, and when we're getting into the nitty gritty, we need to answer these questions, right? So as I said here, a lot of these questions are answered during the building of things. So as you build it, you will have to come up with answers. Again, don't aim for perfection first go, just answer the questions. You don't know whether your answers are right or not. You're going to find out in testing. So if you're going to find out in testing whether your answers are right or not, then don't commit fully to them yet. Like, don't build your answers to these questions in a way that you can't change it still. So early prototyping is you make things really, really malleable. You make things really, really flexible. Late stage development, you are no longer flexible because you've flexed so many times into different ways that you have a good way of doing things. This is why, you know, when we're talking about designing how people interact with things, we use paper a lot for that. Because the cool thing is, like, you've got a bit of paper with all these interface elements blue tacked to it. And when we could do stuff in person, you get people to like just tap on it for things that they would want to do. And then if they tap on something that you'd never intended to be a button, like, you just write down, this is now a button, and you just make it a button. It's like, if someone tapped on it, it's perfect, it's a button. They wanted to use it, we'll let them use it, you know. Or midway through the test, someone's getting confused, you just go, oh, just give me a sec. And then you move everything around, you show it to them again, and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, I can do that. And it's like, yeah, sweet, you know. You can, like, you're so flexible that you can change your program on the fly because it's just on a piece of paper, you know. So cool stuff like that we can do. And this is the kind of thing where, like, start of the process, we are super flexible. End of the process, we are super polished. If you try to polish at the beginning, you're going to waste time, and you're going to do things that just don't make any sense. So you get more polished and less flexible as you go along. So as you've committed to more ideas, so you test the ideas multiple times and you're flexible with them, you change them, you throw a bunch of them away, you start again and stuff like that. And then you start to coalesce towards the ones that are more correct for the way that you're thinking about things. And then you only polish them when you know that you're committed to them long term, right? So this is the feel, right? This is the engineering process. And what this is going to be doing is going in cycles, right? You make it, you test it, you make it, you test it. You make it, you test it. Sometimes you throw the whole thing away and you go back and you say, we have failed at solving the problem. We are no longer meeting our demographics needs, because every test must be checked against what your people need, right? And you still know who those people are because you're thinking about them all the time. And you go, we've gone on the wrong track. That's fine, because we haven't committed that deeply to what we're doing yet. Let's recommit to something else, build up this again and test it, find out, right? That's why we want to be flexible at the beginning. When the thing we're throwing away is an A4 sheet of paper with some blue tack on it, it's really no big deal. But if you go ahead and someone goes ahead and tries to build like an enterprise level solution at the beginning, and you don't test it until they're like 6 weeks into this enterprise thing, then you get stuck in this inflexibility, and then you won't throw it away because you've got the sunk cost fallacy, which is, well, we've put so much work into this, we can't throw it away. And it's like, yeah, but it's wrong. And it's like, no, we can't throw it away. We put too much work into it. And it's like, oh. It's like, yeah, and so many programs. I just wanted to like talk about, like, it's funny, as I was saying that, all this Microsoft stuff popped into my head. I don't want to be mean, because Microsoft has done some really good things. But at the same time, I just had this idea of like Microsoft Windows popped into my head when it's like, we've committed so much, right? Anyway, so yeah, so that's the attitude that I'm pushing towards. It's the idea, like, we keep it simple and flexible at the beginning, and then we shift through to polished and solidifying ideas only after we've tested a lot of these and thrown a lot of them away. And when you're throwing a lot of stuff away still, you don't want to invest too much into it. That's the point that I'm getting there. But again, there are so many details here. Let me just move chicken out of the way and myself. I'm not going to go into these because there's so much to think about here that is going to be very difficult to do and take a lot of time to think about. So what's your dev environment? What are your working hours? Is it just a bunch of you as friends, as students? So you're not going to be doing like 40 hours a week if you're just friends working on something, unless you are, I don't know. But full-timers, you can count on them for like I don't know, 25, 30 hours of work a week. Is your dev environment a shared office that you're in, or is it you're all at home working on your own PCs, which means you're not in a consistent environment between people and stuff like that? Who's on your team? What tech are you using? Like, are you using a particular programming language? Are you using the same IDE? Are you within a company, and does the company have tools already made for you to use? All this kind of stuff. And then, like, okay, not just a whole nother talk, a whole nother degree, management approach and project tracking. Like, this is an entire profession that is separate from the making of the stuff, right? Is managing people. Like, your managers should have a completely different training set to you. They've learnt a different way of doing things and stuff. And so they will have techniques they can use to help keep you on track and make sure that you're doing what you need to do. So it's like all this kind of stuff. I mean, some of you will be them as managers as well. So, there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? And I'm not going to go into any of these because it's just too much, right? It's too much to think about right now. But I put them in this presentation nonetheless because these decisions all have to be made, right? And I love it because in chat people are like C# all the time, Scratch, action script, like all these kinds of things. DocCube was asking for the slides. Let me paste the... Oh no, that's not the slides link. That is the Discord link. One second. Get link. There's the link. I posted the link earlier as well, but I mean, like, don't scroll up in chat. You'll be there for hours. Okay. So, a lot of questions here. Every project is going to need different answers to these questions, which is why I'm going no further than this. It has to be based on what your needs are. So, for example, the whale project that I'm talking about probably needed some kind of database system. So I would be looking at, like, all right, team who knows about building databases, and someone would be like, yeah, I've done SQL before. I'm like, sweet, you're on it, because I don't know that stuff. Like, I can do search algorithms and things, but I can't do the databases that we actually search on and stuff. So I will split. Actually, I'm going to talk about the second splitting work in your team and stuff. But what I want to say is, do not, and this is so funny because I think someone said, yeah, Sam said C# all the time, every time. And here's my point for you, Sam. Don't be afraid to try new or different ways of running things. It's going to be fun. You're going to learn something, even if it's not a guaranteed success. So we often kind of, like, again, flexibility versus polish. We often aim towards the thing that has been successful previously. And yes, that is a logical thing to do, to be like, this process worked before, we will try it again, but it won't always, you don't always know the reasons why something worked. If you've got a lot of experience, you probably know the reasons why things work and why they don't. But if you don't have that experience, it's much better to try lots of different things. I mean, this is like, if anyone knows anything about machine learning and stuff like this is like totally a thing where if you take a greedy approach to solving a problem, then you only go at things that you think are going to that are rated highly on your heuristic or something, and then you just hammer at those things. And because you haven't explored other opportunities and other possibilities, you might be putting yourself into a suboptimal solution, but because you never search other ways, you never find better ways of doing things. Humans are similar. If we go, this is the only way to run things, like, I've got my Kanban board and I run it in Lighthouse, and I don't even know if Lighthouse does Kanban board. I'm just reeling off stuff, and it's like, I only do this. We're never doing it any other way. And your team's like, do we have to do it that way? Because we've got these other ways of doing things. It's actually much simpler for this project. And you're like, nah, we're going to do it this way. And you're like, oh, come on. Right? Then you don't learn. You don't progress. You don't see if other things are going to be better. So, especially back to the very beginning, people ask me about student projects and what should they do for student projects. I would nearly say that every time you do a student project, you do not use any of the same tools you used in the previous project, because your students, a wide variety of experience is going to be better for you than only playing to your strengths. I mean, you do have to. you have to play to your strengths. But if you're learning, you shouldn't always play to your strengths. When you're working and you're trying to get stuff done for money, and the clock is ticking and the rent has to be paid and stuff like that, it's a very different thing, right? So again, different viewpoints based on the situation that you're in. Okay, so are you working in a team? I will just move chicken away a little bit. So I was having fun with the strike through thing when I was making these slides. Oh, nice. So Sam, when you said C# all the time, actually working with different code bases and stuff like that. And Sam said local minimum, maximum, exactly. I didn't want to get too detailed. I don't know which people have done machine learning and AI and algorithms and stuff yet, but that's exactly it. And Joseph was saying exploration versus exploitation. They must be balanced, right? So yeah, that's what we're talking about. So are you working in a team? The likelihood is yes, you're working in a team. Welcome to working in a great team. This swings both ways, right? It totally always swings both ways. It can go either way. So if you've got a project and you're working in a group, it can be the most rewarding thing. It can also be the most difficult thing. It's difficult because you just need to learn how to do things. It's difficult because it's not always systemic. Like we, especially as computer science people, really, really get into working systematically. You know, the computer always obeys rules, 100% obeys rules. It's never inconsistent, and if it is inconsistent, it's often a human error thing. Like how my stream kept crashing all the time, and I just changed the way it was encoding, and maybe the way I'd been asking it to encode was something that was incompatible with my hardware. I don't even know, but since I've changed it, it stopped crashing, so I'm gonna let it go, right? But humans don't work like that. We work with feelings, we work with instinct, we work with connotation rather than fact. We have we have fallible memory and things like that. So we work completely differently, right? And we have different experiences and different kind of viewpoints. The good thing, though, about working with a lot of humans is generally the projects we're working on are for humans, which means it's very easy for us to have the outside of our own head viewpoints of looking at something by just using other people on our team. Again, why we build teams that have lots of different experience. So if I was building this Genshin project, I would get some people who have spent thousands of dollars on Genshin. I would get maybe one of them on the team. I would get someone who's never played Genshin on the team. I would get someone who's played regular, like if the only thing I'm worried about is an app for Genshin, then I would get that kind of demographic, right? I would get people who know and don't know those type of games, so I can test and I can get a wider, like I can meet that wide audience. If I can't get those people on my team, I'm going to need to find those people to test my stuff with as well. But anyway, we're only talking about team here for the moment. Again, I say this should be an entire presentation on its own. Again, this is me squeezing what would potentially be an entire course at a university like UNSW, and I'm squeezing it into, I'm gonna say 2.5 hours because I'm looking at the time, and I haven't hit 2 hours yet because I started like 1/4 past. But yeah, you could do an entire course on how to build and maintain effective teams. I don't know if we'd even do that in computer science. I have a feeling that would be a management subject and not a computer science subject, like an HR thing and stuff, but I don't know. Again, not an expert in those things. I have been managed by very good managers and very good HR people, and it's where I get this knowledge from. I don't necessarily know how to apply it in every situation. But anyway, yes, it would be an entire presentation or an entire course. So I said before, play to your team strengths, but I also said don't play to your team strengths, right? So it's like a bit of both. But let your team be good when they're good. And when your team is not being good, support them, because generally everyone's going to have times when they're feeling good and doing well, and they have times where they don't know what's going on and they're having trouble. And so I think one of the key things in teams is how well teams support each other. So how well teams know how to take the pressure off people when people are under the pump, and they know how to step aside when someone else really knows what's going on, and let them be the one that that drives something. Or even sometimes just pushing someone forward to give them a chance to do something when they haven't had much chances at other times, even if you know they're not the best person for it. You can even, like, I've done this before, where I've spoken to the best person for a particular task, and I've just gone, look, I know that you're the best person for this, but I need this other person to get some experience with this. How much do you think you can help them get going on this? I would like for this team to have two of you with this capability, rather than us always having to rely on you for this thing. And it's such a management thing to be able to, like, how do you express that? Because I could say it in a very bad way and go, I'm giving it to this person, and the other person's like, but that's my thing. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm giving it to them. That's poor management. Whereas good management is like, the reason why I'm giving that other person this thing is because you can't be doing the same thing all the time. You're going to get bored of doing that. I need someone to back you up. And if we spread our skills around a little bit on the team, if you decide you get a better job offer somewhere else and you move away, then this person can take over. They're never going to be as good as you because it's your thing. But I would like them to have some kind of backing for this. And I'd be happy for you, obviously, if you got that nice job and moved on. Like, there's always ways to, and this is why here, Welcome to Hell or Working in a Great Team is very much based on how you work with each other and how you communicate with each other. The majority of projects that succeed or fail are not going to succeed or fail based on your technical capabilities. They're going to succeed or fail based on how well you worked together as a group, how well you communicated, and how well you compromised with each other the right way in a team. Sinio's like, this goes against writing obscure code to secure your job. Yeah, it does. I think nowadays people who write secure code tend to get removed, and early, because once you start seeing that obscure code, you're just like, oh, this is going to get worse. The more code this person writes, the worse our company is. So we need to get rid of them as soon as we can. Code reviews are really good for this. Code reviews can just give you a tap on the shoulder and go, hey, that code's not going to work for us. Like, we've got to do better, or like code reviews can just get someone to change what they're doing early, and so you don't end up being able to write obscure code. But yeah, I know I've heard that it's like this kind of joke that people say that, like, they don't they write code so that they can't be replaced. And there's huge ethical issues with doing that. The other thing I want to say is this point here. Remember that people are more important than the project, especially when you're thinking about the team and you're thinking about working together long term, or you're thinking about your students and you're working with your friends. If you're doing that, then the project is definitely not more important than your friendships. It's actually one of the riskiest things possible, working with people who you're friends with, because a work relationship and a friend relationship are very, very different things. So you want to be at a point with your friends where you know that, like, you could all, like, this could just go belly up. The entire project could go belly up and just fail in a dismal way, but that won't affect you. And whether you're friends, you'll all be able to look back on it and just go, remember that thing we screwed up? It's like, yeah, we screwed that thing up bad. It's like, yeah, whatever, we're friends, we're good. We'll do something else, If you can be like that, that's fine. But if you reach a point where it's like, my friend screwed up my project that I loved, and it was going to be the greatest thing ever, but because they were on the team, it all fell apart, then maybe you need to think about that more, right? You need to check your own attitude. Because if you think it's going to be the best thing ever before you've started, then you've already failed. But if you think that you're going to make something and you're going to make it as good as it can be, then you'll probably be fine. But if you think it was already going to be great, and the only reason it's not great is because someone fucked up, you're the fuck up. Anyway, I don't want to be too mean. Because anyone who is feeling like that, you've got plenty of opportunity to work on that, but you've got to know that that's the problem. But yeah, human issues will be often bigger than technical issues. So this is a lot of the time why You won't notice this at the beginning. Twaka's heading out. See you later. Sam's saying that CSE does a great job of teaching teamwork. So you did it in 2521 and 1531, and they helped build that ability. That's really good, because I was worried about us in like sort of 9-10 week terms being able to give people enough time to really work with the team. So obviously it's working well in your experience. Maybe you're just a really good team player, Sam. Other people are probably not always having great experiences, so it's difficult. Anyway, so this is why I want to say that people are more important in the project, because long term, if you look after your team will achieve great things. But if you throw your team under the bus on behalf of the project, the team will not perform as well. It will not perform as well in the current task or in the future. So you kind of decide, like, that's the kind of thing. But the problem with that, however, especially, I was talking before about money's on the line, time's on the line. You may not have a choice. Someone's got to get burnt for the project. But if the person is willing, because they know that the team is going to support them, and they'll be like, all right, this time it's me. I'll be here all the weekend. And I will get this one thing over the line for the team, and then the rest of the team is like, actually genuinely thankful for that, and comes in for them afterwards and helps them out with all the bits that didn't need their particular expertise, takes over things for them afterwards so they can have an easy week after that. That's the kind of team that's going to work well long term. So it's tough. Again, an entire presentation, an entire like course on its own about how to get a team working well. And as we can see, there are good ways of doing it. COVID took away your teammates in 1531 and 2511. That's tough. That's sad. I apologize. I hope they're okay as well. But anyway, people telling stories of 1531 as well, which is good. Oh no, you started with 5 and ended up with 2 dropping, one whose code didn't work. Yeah. This is what I've heard a lot. Teamwork is very, very difficult at uni. However, teamwork is like a permanent situation. It's just that you'll all get better at it. So when you've reached a point where you're working in a team in say the computing industry, you'll have a varying level of experience in the team. So when you think about people who can't code and it didn't kind of work in the team, there's actually different work we can give them. Look how little coding work there is in this process. Like, some of those people are going to be great at the other stuff that isn't coding, which is why they will still probably be okay. They'll get through their computing degree and just be like, oh, I can't code. This is going to be trouble. And we'd be like, no, we can really use you. Like, you have other things to offer, so it'll still be fine. And also, there will be people on your team who have been doing it for like 20 years, and they'll be like, welcome to the team. So we've got this process that we're going to use, and we used it before on this project. We didn't use it on this project. We used it on this project, which is similar to the one we're doing now. And we know this because I've got a backlog of 30 projects. I know how this works and stuff. And so just follow me on this. You don't have to worry too much about it. We will ease you into it. And when you're in a team like that, you're like, sweet, good, I can learn from these people, I can contribute when I need to, but I don't have to kind of manage issues. Someone with a lot of experience is going to do that. And when you've got those people, those issues sometimes don't even appear, because these people have already built up techniques for how to stop those issues from appearing. Like, a lot of us who have done a lot of this stuff have this kind of background. So don't worry if group work got weird at university, because everyone in your group was at the same level of not knowing how to do that project. Whereas in reality, when we're working on these things, there's going to be 1 or 2 people on this. It's like, oh, we've been through this before. This ain't my first rodeo, right? So it's easier when you've got a couple of those people with that kind of quiet confidence, and you can lean on them, and it gets easier. But anyway, and those people only get like that if they've been nurtured and taught how to do this, and been able to make a lot of mistakes in other projects. Anyway, we're getting close to the end now. It's not the end of this. There's more stuff in this, but the question now is, the next phase of this is, did it work? We have made a certain amount of project. We've gone through all of the questions and answers for how do we implement our plans and things. And let's say we've got our first prototype out. It's not fully featured and stuff, but it's got some stuff going. This did it work is a question we could ask at that point, or we can ask it at the very end after we've done multiple iterations. Like we've spun up a working prototype for this project like 18 times, and each time we added a little bit more to the project, we're still going to ask did it work at the end of each of these phases. People are saying 1531 was very teamwork oriented. 1511, 2521 most coding. Yeah, I think 1511 and 2521 are a combo that nearly follows, where it's all just about like kind of theoretical learning about coding and algorithms and stuff like that. Okay, so let's ask, did it work? How do we know if what we're building is doing what we want it to do? So we need to be clear on our goals. We need to go back to the start of the process and think about all the stuff that we wrote down at the start of the process, or all the stuff that we discussed. I mean, this is why we probably want to write a lot of stuff down. And one thing that, this is exercise that people do. Has anyone ever heard of like an elevator pitch and stuff like that? Which is this exercise that people do where they say explicitly in a very short amount of time, like 30 seconds, exactly what their thing's supposed to do. So the idea is, it's a weird idea, but the idea is you bump into an investor in an elevator and you have 30 seconds to convince them that your idea is worth doing. It doesn't really work like that, but it is important to be able to do that because it keeps you focused on the core of your idea. In the same thing as like make thing, make good is a really, really simple slogan that you can remember. When you have this massive project, all of these pieces and things, it's really good to be able to go back to the beginning and say, this is the thing that we're making. So we are making an app that allows a Genshin whale to organize their complicated inventory and know exactly what they're going to do next in the game to build up that inventory to meet their plans they had. Right, there you go. I did it. 30 seconds, roughly. I don't know. It was rough as well because I made it up on the spot. But I've done this before. But you can see how what I said there was exactly what's needed. Which means that when we make stuff, we can go back to that 30-second thing and go, is this still that vision? And if the vision has changed, is that okay or not? Like sometimes it's like the entire vision for the project has changed, but it is still valid, and we're now fixing a different problem. We need to ask why we got sidetracked and how we got sidetracked, and we'd be like, is that okay or not? A lot of the time it is okay, but a lot of the time it's like, oh no, we're juicero. We're juiceroing now. We're no longer helping anyone. We're just making a random thing. And like we said before, it is whatchamacallit? It's very well engineered. We've got a good team working well together. It's very well engineered. It's well built. It is not helping anyone. It is not helping the people we plan to help. It is not meeting our goals. And we're like, oh, okay. That means we spent too long not thinking about our goals. We forgot to be clear on our goals. And we forgot to judge everything we're doing against this core goal, this core purpose. This is why, that what I said at the beginning, that elevator pitch, it's usually written on the whiteboard. So when we're sitting in an office together working things, the whiteboard is covered in diagrams and stuff. And it's like Marc's work is on one corner of the whiteboard and I've got my diagram there. And it's like, here's the line where it goes to my friend's work. And it's like, these are the crossover points where our data moves between us. Exactly the format of the data will be written there. But across the top will be something like, this is what this project is supposed to do. And we will be able to see it every day and we'll look up and go, okay, that's the goal. And then we do our work and we go, is this work related to that goal? And if we're sure it is, it's good. If we're not sure it is, then we go, hey, next time we have a meeting, can we talk about this? Because I think that these features may not be meeting our goal. So you go, all right, cool. Tomorrow morning we'll have our daily meeting and we'll go, all right, Marc was wondering about this thing. And then we'll all just go, yeah, you're right. That feature you're working on, who's it for? And we go, okay, let's think about the people that could use this. And so maybe we had a group of people that could use this. We got the whale, we got the occasional player, we got the new player, and we've got the people who know a lot about games, people don't know as much about games and stuff, and like people in different situations. And we go, does any of these people actually fit this feature? And we go, well, one of them does, but most of them don't. It's like, is it important? And then you make those decisions, right? But you do always need to like kind of weigh them back to what your original goal was, who you're trying to help, how you're trying to help them, what's the gap you're trying to fill in a market, or a process that you're trying to help people with, all those kinds of things. So yeah, this is the whole reason why when we wrote the plans, we remembered who it was made for. And you can always ask in your head, I call them whale, like, it's the person I'm making the Genshin thing for. Would whale use this? Or how would whale use this? And stuff. And it's really, really kind of important to get your thinking out of your own head. Because if you're only thinking in your own head, you go, I can use this, then you're still only making it for one person then. And the easiest step is to go, I could use this. How would whale use this? And then you're designing for 2 people instead of 1. It's not a big jump, but it is doubling the number of people you can work for, which is a big jump, right? So the first thing we always do is like, just get out of your own head and think about how someone else would do this. So we often do this where we make up a fake person, or like that game designer I was saying in the beginning, every time they put something into the game, they thought of how their grandmother would approach it. And it gave them this kind of creativity to be able to do something different. And it's the same way, even when it's not creative, when it's like, I'm trying to solve a problem. If I can solve it for me and someone very different from me, then I can get a very interesting solution out of that. Then we could also, if you can't even get out of your head and do it, you can find someone else and just like, hi, I know someone who is a whale in this game. Can we just test it with them and see what they do? So see what they do with the app and see what they think about it. This is the kind of thing that we're going to do with every build. Every time we have a running build, we're going to work with it. So, the whole point of testing is the fresh eyes on the app, and different users that use it in different ways are going to tell you better stories. So, you're going to be running this thing with people, whether they're within your team or outside of your team. Within your team is only useful for certain things. After a while, you need to be doing it with people who have never seen it before, and nearly every time you test, you need to find fresh people who have never seen it before, which is difficult. And depending on how high profile you are, more and more people are going to hear about it the more you're making it. So the idea that you can get fresh eyes gets more difficult the more famous you are, but usually it's still possible. So what you do is you watch and listen to how people use it, and then you gather all this information, and then you see how you want to change things. So you can see that people are not doing it the way that you'd intended, or they're not getting their problems solved, which is more important than what you intend. So I was like this point here, it's like, people will try to do weird things with your app, and you'll look at it and you go, that person is using the app wrong. And you go, but the thing is, this is how you find out what you did wrong in design, is when you think the person's using the app wrong, they're not going into a test and saying, I'm going to use this thing wrong to screw with the designer. This is not what people do when they go in to help you test the app, or they go in to do a gameplay test of your game. What they do is they just act natural. They're going to act naturally and do the things they need to do. So what you're actually going to find out is that you know how your app should work, and then you think that that is a universal truth. But what you do when you find people like doing what you think are weird things in your app, they're doing what is natural to them in it, and you've just discovered another portion of your demographic which acts differently from you, and it's very valuable information, because these are the blind spots in your design. Like, no one lives without these blind spots. We can only design for ourselves or for people who are very similar demographic to us. We can't really design for other people without a great deal of expertise or experience. And unless you are like, really experienced with this, when we're just making stuff, especially student projects, we're chock full of these blind spots, right? We don't even know how other people live, so we're just gonna make something, and then we do this testing, and when we see people using it completely differently, we're like, oh, okay, well, that's really interesting. All right, that's another workflow path. Let's like write down what they did and what they intended to do and what they thought was going to happen. You can ask people about this when you're testing, and then you can be like, okay, that's another way we can use this app. You can see this in heaps of interfaces, even operating systems, file navigation, games, and stuff like that, where there's a whole bunch of hotkeys you can use for things, but you can point and click on things as well. Like you can Control C and Control V to move files around in a file system, or you can pick them up and drag them with your mouse and stuff. There's different ways of doing things. And that's our way of accommodating lots of different ways that people like to do things. So a lot of the shortcut keys are like your kind of power users, people who have a lot of experience with things, and can memorize a lot of different combinations to do things so they can get there faster. So professionals, enthusiasts, and stuff like that. Whereas someone who's using a computer, once every few days at most and stuff, and is using it just for communicating with people, social media, that kind of thing, they're not necessarily going to go through and memorize a whole bunch of like keyboard shortcuts, even the ones that we, as like, 'cause I say I'm part of that core group, right, would consider simple. Well, I'm a computing professional, so obviously I'm way out on one end of the spectrum. The awkward thing is nearly everyone making apps is way out on one end of the spectrum. So if you want to make apps for people where all different walks of life can use it, you got to be really careful, because you're at 1% on the edge, of people who even know how to build apps, let alone how to use them. So you're like extreme user, not core even. So it's interesting. So like these are the things where we can alleviate the fact that we're going to have a whole lot of blind spots in what we're doing, because sometimes like people like us will put a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts in things and not even inform the user that they exist. It will just be using, oh yeah, this is great, look how quick we are, and it's like, do they know this? Is there a way they can find this out? It's like, oh, we haven't put that in. It's like, yeah, okay, see how that's a problem. Yeah. So but that's a very common mistake for us, I think, as the kind of expert users, because expert users are most likely to be the people making things. It's if they're free to play, they're using it wrong. Blender removed the keyboard shortcuts in one of their versions and replaced them with menus, and I can't use it anymore. I had to relearn everything. That's pretty bad, removing the keyboard shortcuts, because the keyboard shortcuts existing never hurt new users. They're there for the expert users, and the menus are there for the new users, and you can have them both coexisting without any problems. So I would say that's a design mistake on their behalf to remove it. There's even a name for it. It's called if I remember correctly, the expert reversal effect, where you build things so they're really accessible for new users, but there's a bunch of people who use the previous version of something who know it really well, and if you disrupt their workflow, then you've removed their expertise, and you got to be careful not to cause expert reversal when you expand things to meet more demographics, because it's always a good thing to make your software more usable for the demographics that might want to use it, so you expand your demographics, but you don't want to set anyone back while you're doing that. So it's an interesting thing, right? And people are saying this, like how Final Cut Pro became iMovie Pro X, something changed, expert reversal. Every time Microsoft Word updates its core interface, so the Office suite, every time it updates, they cause expert reversal effects. And it's tough, right? Because sometimes you look at the design and how non-progressive it is, and you go, we could have designed something much better than that. But the problem is, every time you do a redesign to make it like kind of objectively more useful design, you cause expert reversal because people got really used to the bad design that was in the product previously. So it's really difficult, right? Senior said your dad was so pissed when he updated his Word Excel from 2003 to 2007. I know that. I was too. And then I was like, okay, right. Look, as a design professional, I understand why they did it. But I was personally affected, but I still understand why they did it. But I think there's plenty of people who were personally affected but didn't understand the design methodology behind why it happened. So it's like, it's difficult. So yeah. When you're doing the testing, always be prepared to go back and rebuild things. Because otherwise, why are you doing testing? If you're doing testing and you ignore all the negative testing and you only receive the positive stuff and you go, the app's brilliant. It's like, okay, you know why you're testing. You're not testing for positive feedback, actually. You're testing for negative feedback. Positive feedback gives you nothing. It just tells you that maybe you can release it. Negative feedback tells you what you can change, which is much better. You can go back to work. So that's why we do it. We do it to see what these weird things people do with our stuff and go, oh, cool. That's a new path through the app. Let's actually make that work. You just find things that just functionally don't work and things, or you find that everyone's gravitating towards a certain feature and you go, oh, they're gravitating toward that even though it's like 3 menus deep. Maybe that thing should be on the front page. And you do that, and then you rebuild it that way and test it again. And you go, wow, everyone's using it from the front page. And you go, okay, cool. We figured out where we're going with this, you know? Or you go, the information that we're displaying on screen, no one ever looks at that part. You know, they never look over there at that thing. That doesn't appear to be important. You take it away and test and no one looks for it. And you go, oh, it wasn't. Okay, good. You know, lots of little things like that. When you're testing with humans like that, when you're testing without humans, like a lot more internal testing, you're testing whether things actually function or not. So it's like slightly different things. So this is very human-based when I'm talking about the testing here. But you will be doing the same kind of thing at a higher rate of iteration internally for just does it work at all on things. And like, I haven't really talked about that technical testing. I've been talking a bit more about like, are we meeting our original goal testing? And that's important because the original goal was human-based. All right, so that's why I'm talking about testing with humans here. Zero said there's a common cognitive bias where people think they've found a pattern and ask questions they believe to be affirmative. If it's wrong, they test the affirmative again and don't test the negatives. Yeah, we always want things to just kind of get positives out of it. And that's why a lot of the time when we're doing testing with real human users, we will often not talk to them. The only things we'll talk to them about is we will ask them what they're thinking, but we won't judge or anything. We just want to know what they're thinking at the moment. Like when I see a user stop, you know, they're using my app and they just stop. And they pause for like 10 seconds, and no one pauses for 10 seconds when they're sure of what they're doing. They'll always kind of jump in and go, hey, tell me what you're looking at now, what you're trying to work with now. And they'll be like, well, I'm trying to find something to do X, Y, Z. And you're like, sweet, we know what we're missing. They can't find this thing. Paths and menus are unclear, or there's an icon that needs to exist, or something like that, you know, that kind of thing. But otherwise, you don't talk to them much while they're doing things. So you want to receive the information in a purest format as you can. I always joke with people when they're testing, because I had game students who would do this all the time. While they're testing their games, they would explain the whole game to the tester while they were testing it. And I was like, I'd pull them aside and say, so you're going to be with every copy of this game you ship. Like you're going to go to the houses of every single person that you ship this game to so you can explain that to them, are you? And they'd be like, what do you mean? It's like, I can't do that. Exactly, you can't do that. Why are you doing it in testing? And they're like, oh. It's like, but it's like when you learn it, you go, oh, I get it, right? Have to allow the program, the app, the game to live on its own, because it needs to be able to give everyone its information. I can't follow my programmer around and explain to everyone how to use it, right? The age of us shipping manuals with our games or with our programs is over. The program must serve itself without needing documentation for the user. Unless it's like super expert application, which in that case maybe it will have some documentation, but most of the time we expect to be able to just use things by seeing them and using them. And if there's help, it's within the application, so we have to build it into it. So anyway, yeah, again, big field. Not going to go too deep into it. Sorry, I'm just checking. Oh no, it's alright. I always check my SMSs when I'm doing this because my partner's usually watching the stream. She tells me if there's an issue. She was just sending me an SMS to a link to Stray Kids stuff, which is very important as well. All right, so back to this, and you can tell we're reaching the end of the talk here. Make thing, make good, because this is the thing that I want you to remember out of this. Simple idea, and it works well. You can repeat it in your head. It's a safe mantra to have in your head because it's rarely going to lead you astray. Make something. Don't get caught up in second guessing. Don't try to do too much. You'll end up paralyzing yourself. Make it good. Once it's made, test it against the things that you'd planned. Test it against the things that you wanted to achieve. See if it achieves those things or not. Find ways to improve it. Make it again. Make it good. Make it again. Make it good. Make it good. Make thing. Make good. Just keep going. That's all you need to do. This is very much an iterative process. Not everything will be an iterative process, but it's very hard to do good things without an iterative process. And it's very easy to do software in an iterative process, which is why we gravitate towards this idea so easily. Because you know that in coding and in making computing stuff is that you can test things nearly immediately and get immediate feedback. It's very, very different from a lot of other fields of engineering, even though they still use this. But like in other fields of engineering, like I was looking at like really closely back in the day when I was like racing bicycles and stuff about how they build bikes, you know, and which companies were spending a lot of time in wind tunnels with their bikes and which companies were working on bikes that were rugged for difficult terrain and stuff. And they would have different processes and stuff, but they were still doing the same thing. Like they would make a frame for a bicycle, not knowing exactly how it was going to work, and they'd test it in a wind tunnel and stuff, and they go, interesting thing is when we changed the shape of the tubes, I nearly called them pipes, the tubes on the bike, we'll get much better wind resistance and stuff. And so through that testing, we changed the shape. Other people, like, what we figured was that the weak point of the bicycle was in the structure of the tubes. What we found out was it wasn't actually that, it was the welds and the joins, and so we changed the way we're doing things, right? So even those people where their cycle is much slower to iterate, they're still doing it. Sam has a funny joke there. Make bridge, make good. Oops, bridge collapsed. Yeah. Have you noticed? I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people haven't been on campus for 2 years, which is fair enough, you know. If you had been, you may have seen the civil engineering and architecture students and things like that walking around with those big models they do of things. And there's even bridge building competitions where everyone gets the same materials, basically like balsa wood and PVA glue and stuff like that. And they have to make bridges, and it's based on how good your engineering is, because everyone's got the same materials, how good your bridge is. Like, you know, a tester will come along and put like a metal weight on it and see whether it buckles or not, and that kind of thing. So what they're doing there is they're prototyping and testing in a way that they don't put humans in cars on it. And so when they get to the point where they're building actual bridges, they've had enough testing that when the thing gets made, they can guarantee that at least for the first sort of 50 to 100 years, this thing is not going to break. You know, we have this funny thing in the computing industry where we ship stuff that's broken because it's so easy for us to patch it and fix it. We're just like, just ship it, whatever, we'll deal. We can fix it later, you know. It's like, it's the difference between the film industry and the computer games industry. It's like, if you see a film, you see the film, that's it, that's the whole film, it's not going to change. I mean, yes, some films get remastered, re-released and stuff like that, but it's not like computer games. Computer games are like a live service entertainment where if you play the game on release, it's at a certain state, and then you play the game 6 months later and it's different. You know, people kept working on it for that whole 6 months, rebalancing things, tweaking things, fixing bugs and stuff like that, which is why you never play anything on release. But anyway, thank you, Cyberpunk, for teaching me such a valuable lesson. I got so excited. I bought a computer, took time off work, played the game, and just had to put so much effort into liking it. I was tired from the amount of effort I had to put into liking it. Anyway, it happens, right? So, speaking of shipping, how do we get to the point where we ship these things? How do we how do we get to the finish of this? It's so funny now. I can't say ship anymore without thinking of like shipping K-pop stars and stuff like that. But anyway, Zero, Fallout 76 taught me to not pre-order games. Zero did the bridge building competition in with straws in an intro to med science course. That is weird. That's a weird thing for medical science, but maybe it's more of a group work team building exercise, you know. Sam Schreier, did CD Projekt Red ever make good? They're still coming. They're still coming. They're still patching it. I heard that their most recent patch live stream was met with a little bit of player base hostility. I think they're still not quite there yet. But also I think they're at a point now where, because they're in such a public situation, they've built up so much negative publicity that like it's nearly nothing they can do with it anymore. Joseph's got to head off. Thanks for coming by. I should keep going, right? Because we're like 10:45 now. Yes, Zero, good example. No Man's Sky did it really well. They had some really negative press early on, and they kind of had to fight through that negative press, but they eventually got it to the point where heaps of people now are recommending. They're like, this is a really good game. You should totally play this. And I will eventually, but I mean, I keep saying that, right? I'll put it on the list with the hundreds of other games that I am going to play if I get time eventually, sometime in my life. I was talking to a friend and just going, when can I retire? It's like, I have a lot of computer games to play, literally. Like, I want to say this, when can I retire? Is now a good time? And they're like, dude, how much super do you have? I'm just like, not that much, not enough to live off. And they're like, well, that's the answer. You can't retire yet. I'm just like, but what if I want to? Like, yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. And Sinio is saying Japanese games are weird in a sense they get much less fixes after release. Yeah, it is very interesting. The Japanese approach to games is very different. It always reminds me more of the like Japanese make games similar to how Americans make movies. It is presented in its finished form. Americans are making games much more like you would. What's a good analogy? Is like a restaurant. You put something on the menu, and if people don't like it, you change the menu for the next week. You know, like, so the American games are really shifting over to that idea, and the Japanese games very still in like what I think is a slightly more old-fashioned way. It's not worse. Right, it's just more old-fashioned, is that you present a completed product. Because a lot of us would prefer certain games to have a completed product on presentation and other games to have an ongoing thing. What I think is super interesting at the moment is the new kids on the block. They're not kids. They're very, very powerful and have a whole lot of money, is the Chinese game development teams and companies, because they're really coming up. They have a lot of backing, and they've built up really serious talent. Like, it took them a while. I think China's been playing catch up with video games for at least a decade, but there's a few examples now of China starting to put out really top tier stuff and really competing against the American, European, and Japanese markets. So I think we're going to see like a new powerhouse in game development coming up over the next decade, I reckon. And I'm really interested to see what happens, because new perspectives, new attitudes, and things are usually going to shake up things. For better or worse, we'll see. Because I think something was really funny is like just talking about stuff like Genshin Impact. People were saying that in China the issue of pay to win is acceptable. In America, the issue of pay to win is not so much. Like the idea of loot boxes and stuff being like, if you put more money into the game, you get better at the game, is something that's really seen as anathema in American gaming. It's like, this is horrible. This takes away the fairness of things and the balance and everything. And China's like, yeah, whatever. You got money, you get better. And it's like, this is really interesting because it's like the opposite. It's like America's like the capitalist country, right? The one where you literally are better if you have more money. And China's the communist country where it's like, you're not supposed to be better if you have more money. Yet their viewpoint on the monetization of games is opposite. I'm just like, that's so weird. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, I think, as this happens. It's going to be similar to, I would say, I don't know when I would place this, but probably 15 to 20 years ago, the advent of the European game developers, very much coming out of like Poland, Russia, Eastern Europe kind of area. First ones that like I would talk about is like Crytek, right? Was that Polish? Oh, I can't remember if it was Polish or German. It's like, but it was like, it was European, and they really pushed things with the CryEngine and Crysis and some of those games that set the foundation. Even CD Projekt Red, you could consider one of them, because The Witcher 1 was at least 12 years ago. I'm pulling numbers out of my head here, right? But they have been like a force for change in games over the last decade, where the Americans and the Japanese were well established and the Europeans kind of lifted. Horizon Zero Dawn, another example coming out of Europe. And you get that kind of shift in perspectives when new players come in with new perspectives. Crytek was German, right? I thought it might be. Yeah, I couldn't remember, because I remember it's like Crytek GmbH. I was like, no, that's the German copyright. Halogen said, like, an interesting subset of mobile games are Japanese business people. Low gameplay, but easy to invest in emotionally via characters and financially via gacha. Nicole's heading off. Thank you. See ya. Yeah, and I can totally see that happening, because a lot of people want games that release them from the stress of life. And intense gameplay does not release you from the stress of life. So free progression, idle games, kinds of things, makes you feel like stuff is working for you, even when it's like not working for you in other parts of your life. So it's interesting, right? Anyway, let's keep going here, because I'm pretty close. Because I want to talk about like finishing the project, because everything I've talked about here so far has been building up the project, and it's getting late, so I should do this. So the thing I want to say here is stop when you're done. And this is really, really hard to do, because a lot of people don't stop projects. And this is like another artwork thing. It's like, when is an artwork finished? And it's like, art is never finished. It is only abandoned. Every artist looks at things that are finished and they go, there's more that I could do with this. But, you know, there's only so many months I'm going to spend working on this one project. So when you have this project, it's good to be able to abandon it when you have to. When you know that there are more important things to do, then you know that you're going to stop cycling. Because you could keep iterating, you could keep building stuff, testing it, testing it. But at some point, you've just got to stop. And I want to say it's not a bad thing to let a project go if you have to just put it aside and go, it's not finished. And for student projects, this is going to be term starts again, and you've got things to do. You've got important things to do. So you go, I've got to let this personal project go. Maybe we'll go back to it in the future, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. We've got to step away. And so sometimes it doesn't matter, because you learned a lot about the process. And sometimes at that point where you let it go, it is actually ready for release anyway. But that's actually the next slide, is learning how to ship it. So I can't say ship anymore. It's funny. Anyway, set yourself a release date. Very difficult thing to do, but also very important. Every project needs to happen at some point. I actually learnt so much about this doing theater, because opening night happens. People turn up to watch your show, and you have no choice. It goes on in the condition it is in. So if it's not in perfect condition, it still has to go. But if you've been following the process well enough, and every time you did an iteration cycle, it was running and functioning at the end of that cycle, you can just get the most recent one and go, that's the one that's going at the moment. And it's embarrassing, but we're going to do a day zero patch on this thing to try to get it to this certain level of completeness. When you're inexperienced or overworked, you will always hit those times where you're not ready, but then you go anyway. But it's important to actually have a date, even in your personal projects and stuff, is to try to set a date for yourself and force yourself to finish by that time. Because having that date, it's not like you go full bore and then you just stop at that point. What you're going to do as you approach that point is you're going to start tying things off. So you're going to start looking at features and saying, we're abandoning that feature because we can't finish it by the date. And this is good because it gets you to prioritize which things are important, which things meet the goals and which things don't. And you start cutting the things that don't. It's actually better for your project knowing that you're going to cut some stuff out of it. And you kind of have to get to that point where you learn how to complete something. It doesn't have all the features that you want it to have, but it is complete and it runs, which is important. So this is the kind of thing where if you don't set a finish date for yourself, you have this eternal project that just goes forever and you keep redoing it and then never quite finishing it. And thanks very much, Star Citizen, but can you release at some point in the future, right? I don't know if anyone else is on that, but I backed Star Citizen when it like, I think it first went on Kickstarter in, I want to say 2003, 2004, I think, and we're still waiting. It's like, are you going to make a game, or are you just gonna keep just like absorbing crowdfunding money and developing things? And it's interesting because so much stuff is being developed, but they just won't finish. You know, they could have finished several times now, but they just haven't. And I don't know if they're actually planning to finish, or they're just going to keep their company going by selling ships for a game they're never going to release. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. So when you hit that date, if it's not ready, you still have to stop. So even if you're stopping in a bad way and you're not ready to ship, it's something where you have to do. You have to stop and you have to assess it. You need to look at it and see whether it worked or not, rather than just having this thing that drags on interminably into the future, much like this stream, which I feel has gone on too long now. But anyway, I'm so close to the finish. I want to wrap it up. And also the important thing is to learn how to complete what you're doing by taking out the bits that you know that you can't finish. Like the ability to be able to do that is like, that's like upper tier management. The ability to say, like 3 weeks out from the finish, that feature gets cut now. And it can be really tough when it's like one of the things you're working on, but a good manager is like, cut, complete these ones, we ship with this. And the best managers are the ones that can do that earlier than others. That can be like 6 months out, that feature's not going to make it to release. And as the devs, you're just kind of like, how do you know that? How do you know that thing's not going to make it to release? We could totally do that. And it's like, yeah, you say you can do that, but programmers always say they can do things in a certain amount of time. And then when we measure the real time amount of time it took you to not just implement it, but test it and go through some cycles and make it work, it's always like 3 times as long as you said it was going to be. And then us as programmers, we just kind of go, that's true. That's always the case. You learn that. We always get overambitious when we make estimates of how long it's going to take to do things, and good managers will see right through us and just be like, nah. Sinio, I feel exposed. We all feel exposed. Every time I say that, all of us as coders are just like, I said I could do that in half an hour. It's been 4 days. Yeah. So this is the thing, like learning how to release is actually really important. This is why I say do stuff like 48-hour game jams and hackathons and stuff like that, because you have no choice. You've got to release it. You've got to show it off in 48 hours. So it forces you to take this entire process I've talked about here and just condense it into 2 days. It's super, super hard. Then when your project is done, project is finished, and there's no more you're doing with it, you want to look back over it. So when you stop working on something, so I'm not saying when you've finished a project and ship it, just when you stop working on it, you want to think about things. Because one of the things that we want to get out of every project that we do is not necessarily get something that we can sell or get something that we can submit for marks or anything like that. It doesn't have to have that extrinsic value. The intrinsic value is, what did we get from the project? Like, did we get something out of doing it? So we think about what worked and what didn't in the project. This is like really standard stuff, but retrospective reflection over things is something that we forget to do a lot. A lot of the time, once we ship something, we're so tired, we put it away and we never look at it again. But if you don't go back over and pick at things, you don't learn from it, and you'll make some of the same mistakes again. So some of the mistakes you won't make again because they've imprinted themselves so strongly in your mind you can't escape them. But some things that some things we don't think about unless we go back over the process. So we've got to go back and look at it. What worked and what didn't? What did we actually get out of it? So this is the interesting thing that, like, I would love to do with uni assignments, but I've never never been able to, is get people to do an assignment, and then the next assignment is purely looking at your previous assignment and explaining why you got the marks that you got. You're like, I failed this particular part of the assignment. And often it's like, I don't know why. But then if you spend the time to actually look back over your code and your planning and your design, you can be like, oh, this is why. And then you uncover this like really important thing, which is like, the reason why that thing didn't work is that I misunderstood the entire concept of what we're doing, and I got caught up in the technical making of this thing. And then you've really learned something. Because that's a lesson that you can take into every project into the future, is that don't get caught up in making cool code when you're, if making cool code is going to make you forget what the goal was for the project at the beginning, right? Because that happens to us a lot. Anyone who loves programming for programming's sake is going to fall into that trap. We all do it. It's like, oh, how'd you make this really, really cool algorithm? And then like your coworker's like, what does it do? And it's like, it just organizes these things. And it's like, those things don't need to be organized. It's not part of the project. It's not part of the goal. And you're like, shit. And they're like, how long did you spend on that? And you're like, 4 days. It happens all the time. That's why we pay managers to look after us. And so they can poke us and just go, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing. It's so cool. And it's like, oh, really? That's cool, is it? Is it doing the thing that we need you to do? And you're like, no. It's pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, looking back, we can figure that out so that we don't cause problems like that in the future. And also just like, what did we get from this project? So it doesn't matter if we didn't get a finished thing. It's like, can we learn something from it? Would we do things differently next time? Or did we discover something that we did weird this time that's actually going to be useful in the future? So all that stuff is going to be cool. And also failed projects, no such thing. A project never makes its release. And nothing happens. Okay, yes, I guess that's a failed project if you're in a startup or you're doing it for a business or something like that. But if you're doing it for your personal research, it doesn't have to succeed. You know, you can learn a lot from something that doesn't effectively ship. So it's this kind of thing where when I'm talking about make thing, make good, you're thinking about a project where you make it and then you make it good. When I say make thing, make good to myself, I'm talking about you as people. So I didn't make you, but I can kind of remake you, because that is what teaching is. I put ideas into your head, and then I see if you can actually use them. And if you can't use them, then I talk to you about how you could use them differently, and then I send you back in. It's like make again. It's not really making, but you know what I mean, right? I get you to do something again, and then I see how you do it and if you did it better. And the whole point of me as a teacher is to try to get you into that process of not just thinking make thing, make good about the project, but thinking make thing, make good about your skills and your capability to do things. Because every failed project, if it's done right with this kind of retrospective, every failed project is a step towards projects that can't fail. They can't fail because you're so good at projects. Like, you've failed so many that you understand how it works. You actually learn more from failed projects than successful ones. Successful ones, you could just be successful by mistake and have no idea why you got there. But every failed project, you can pick at it and know why you got there. And you go, all right, we've learned something, right? So that's what it is. So we are expanding make thing, make good. It is no longer in an individual project. It is your skills for all the projects you're going to make in the future. And I just wanted to post a picture of a whale. This is a literal whale, like a magical whale that attacks you in a particular boss fight in Genshin. So that's where we're at. I actually did 3 hours, like less than 3 hours there, so it was like 2 hours and 45 minutes for that talk, which is fine considering the chill breaks that I put in between just to talk about random stuff and things like that. So I know not that many people are left, so I assume that some people are going to come back and watch the rest of it later and stuff like that. But either way, whether you're still here now or you're or watching this later to get an idea about this thing that I was talking about, I hope it was helpful. I hope this kind of overview of the whole engineering process and stuff helps you when you then end up doing courses on the nitty gritty of, like, there are courses that will do portions of this, courses doing this entire process but over like 10 weeks instead, and that kind of thing. When that comes about, I hope that this information I gave you helps you get that stuff going. And also, if you want to do your personal projects, I hope that this information is really useful in terms of choosing what you want to do and getting something out of it as you do it. Skiria Schrodinger says, a child fighting a child. Yes. This is Diana. She's the little girl with stupendous powers over ice, fighting a whale made out of water, which is being controlled by someone called Child. Anyway, Genshin stuff. So I'm gonna wrap it up there. It's been a long one, but I hope you got something good out of it. And Sinio only knows Klee. Klee's pretty funny as well. Yeah, and hopefully some of the stuff I've given you, because you don't need to know all of it, like, but I tried to do it in a simple way as possible, and hopefully that will set you up for understanding and using this process in the future, because this process is going to come up again and again and again, and it's super useful because it's kind of like, in its like step back overview idea, it's a really useful way to just make things in general, like especially when you're thinking about making things that serve a purpose. And that is, in a nutshell, what engineering is: identifying things that need to be made for, sometimes for humans, or sometimes just for the world, for some kind of purpose, and effectively making them. Cool. Oh, Halogen is going to share a progress photo of the Genshin paper model on the server. That's awesome. I look forward to seeing that. All right, I'm going to wrap up the stream there. Thank you all for coming along. Yeah, and hope this has some kind of usefulness to you. I will see you next Monday.